Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the State Charter School Board meeting for May 12th, 2022. We would like to thank our staff for all the preparation that they do and the extra work that they put in to make sure that our board meetings run smoothly. We're grateful for our State Board of Education Deputy Superintendent Stallings, who's joining us today, and for the USBE representative, Matt Hymas, who is also here and clearly following the trend that Brian and I have been setting with the appropriate beverages. And, right? And we're especially grateful for the board members who volunteer their time to work on the authorizing side of things in Charter World. So with that, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
We have a couple of our State Charter School Board members who are joining us online, Member Smith and Member Olson, and we'd like to excuse Member Bassett, who had some prior commitments that she is taking care of. At this point, we are at the public comment portion of our agenda. As a reminder, public comment is a chance for the public to provide commentary to the board, the State Charter School Board. We receive that commentary. It's not a time for back and forth discussion. Each public comment will have 3 minutes, and Joanne, will you be doing the timer on those, or Director Lambert? Okay, we have several people from the public to provide comment today, and we're grateful that you are here and engaging. The first will be Charles Reynolds from Vanguard Academy, and then we'll have Dan Jessup from Vanguard Academy. Next, we'll have Tanya Toole, and then Erin Preston. So we'll proceed in that order, and you have 3 minutes each. Come on up. If you push the speak button on the microphone, it will turn red. You'll be able to see that your mic is on.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Charles Reynolds, and I am the newly appointed director of Vanguard Academy. I want to assure this board that I will make sure that Vanguard's activities are and will continue to be in compliance with Utah state laws and regulations. And I ask the board to consider the information that we have submitted and that we will present. And I'm looking forward to resolving the issues that we have so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dan Jessup?
Good morning. My name is Dan Jessup. I am a lifelong resident of Salt Lake City, and my present involvement with Vanguard Academy, I have been nominated to and accepted as a provisional board member pending the approval of the amendment which has been submitted. So I have met with the board a couple of times to get my feet wet, to learn a little bit more about the focus and the energy in Vanguard Academy. My background is that I am a journeyman electrician. I have worked in maintenance and repair operations in manufacturing sectors in Salt Lake for 40 years. As a STEM or STEAM school, Vanguard is interested in strengthening their technical part of their curriculum, and I am looking forward to being able to apply my career understanding and skills in the trades and the technical side of the craft world to help young people see and find opportunity in technical aspects and trades that I believe are a rich field of opportunity for our young people. And I'm very passionate about helping young people. I have spent many years working with scouting programs and other youth programs, and in helping to foster good leadership skills and good civil behavior in people, and helping young people learn that there's more to this life than just what's on the keyboard. There are lots of other avenues in life to pursue that they may not have really considered at all. So I look forward to helping the students of Vanguard see other fields of opportunity that maybe they haven't really engaged before. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya Toole. She is joining us online. Ms. Toole, if you can hear us online, if you would unmute and go ahead and make your public comment, you have 3 minutes. We'll move to Erin Preston. If Tanya, if you're able to connect, then we will take you after Ms. Preston.
Hello, my name is Erin Preston. I am one of the original founders, board chair, and former director of Providence Hall Charter School in Harriman, Utah. I spent 2006 to 2014 in all of those roles, dedicated to creating the International Baccalaureate program at that school, a unique program that from the K through 12 level made it one of 12 schools in the entire United States with that authorization and the ability to issue IB certificates, IB diplomas, and the IB education, which is critical thinking skills, and with the oversight of the IB program. I saw on the agenda today that Providence Hall is looking to remove the IB authorization that we worked so hard for the junior high and high school levels, which will effectively turn the school into something we never wanted to have, which is something just like any other educational experience in the schools that surround it. In creating the school, we were trying to create something that was truly unique for the area, but also transportable throughout the world. The IB program was created after World War II to teach people to think critically and to think for themselves. I think that this is a time when those things are essential. So our core philosophy, as was developed when I was there, is to teach students to think critically, communicate effectively, and act responsibly in an ever-changing global community. Each of those are key parts of what might be taken away if the amendment to remove the IB program is granted. Why does keeping the IB program matter? Because when we were creating this, we were creating a program that would have outside oversight through the IB program and the IB authorization process, which is a worldwide organization that helps with teacher training and it helps with maintaining standards. And by having that outside organization and that outside authorization, it would ensure that this program would continue after our original founders left and would be available to the citizens of the community I am still in. I am very concerned about why this would be taken away right now. That was the central core of our budget, of our operations, of our teacher training, of everything. I don't know what's left of the school if you take that away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Preston. Ms. Toole, are you?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think we can hear you.
Yay. I'm sorry. The mute's been off. So I'm Tanya Toole, and I run a nonprofit agency that has served people who have transitioned from polygamy for 14, almost 15 years now. Have served many people from the Kingston, also known as the Davis Co-op group. And I would just like to make a general suggestion based off of the unfortunate things that I've heard happen in the Vanguard school. We had something similar happen down in Colorado City in Hilldale, Utah. And they brought in outsiders to actually hire the staff members along with the administration to ensure that there was not religious control within the school. And I think that would probably be the most effective way to ensure that things are changed in that school. I am aware of the two gentlemen that did speak. They are part of that group. And I feel like if they can't get the religious control out of the school, it should either be shut down at this point, or we should bring in a third party to actually do the hiring to ensure that it is given proper education and proper controls, policies and procedures within the actual Vanguard school. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Ms. Toole. That concludes our public comment portion of the meeting, and we'll have Member Phillips provide us with our board member thought.
Thanks so much, Chair, for this opportunity. The signature on my email account contains a quote that I love from Aristotle's Poetics. Learning gives the liveliest pleasure. I grew up feeling that learning gives the liveliest pleasure as a result of the many great teachers I've had during my lifetime. I hope I don't become emotional. I already am, so I'm going to get it together here. At the end of this school year, and after nearly 40 years in the classroom, I'm retiring from teaching. As a result of this circumstance and the winding down of the school year, I found myself thinking about my teachers and how much I owe them for the kind of life I've lived. A life full of music, art, theater, philosophy, literature, languages, history, science, mathematics, logic, rhetoric, ethics, and humanity. An examined life. I'm so grateful to them all. A couple of highlights. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Burton, who instilled in me a love of a good story, fair-mindedness, and civility. A middle school teacher, Frances Mickelson, who was educated in a one-room schoolhouse in central Utah where she learned Latin and a love of Shakespeare and English grammar, passions which she instilled in her students. Dawn Ward, one of the most inspiring and effective American history teachers to ever teach in the state of Utah. Marion Morton, an English teacher whose public tirades against poorly written papers were infamous and included cursing worthy of Shakespeare himself. In those days, UPAC didn't enforce that quite as intensely. Her powerful teaching and high expectations resulted in some of the best AP English passing rates ever seen in the state. Brent Palmer, an exceptional math teacher who taught calculus to countless generations of students for more than 50 years. A teacher whose career preceded his teaching of my graduating class and extended to my youngest daughter to whom he taught calculus. Mr. Palmer only recently retired. Professor W. Lindsay Adams at the University of Utah, who is the foremost living scholar on Philip II of Macedon, and until his recent retirement, was the principal ancient historian for many decades at the University of Utah. Professor John Hall at Brigham Young University, who genuinely believed himself to be Julius Caesar reincarnated, and who taught me the intricacies of both Latin and Roman history. Professor Margaret Toscano, a scholar of classical languages, comparative literature, and cultural studies at the University of Utah, who has mentored generations of scholars, and especially women, as they have sought to achieve their academic and career goals. And Paula Mortimer, a beloved piano teacher. She recently passed. Excuse me, a mentor and a friend, a music teacher with a 55-year career in teaching students of all ages and backgrounds to love and produce music, and a fine musician in her own right. Deep in my heart, I think I've been attempting over the course of my teaching career to do for my students what these wonderful teachers did for me. I perhaps have not been as successful as they were. They were wonderful examples. I wish to express my deep gratitude to all my teachers, to my teaching colleagues, to the teachers in our charter schools, to all teachers in public and private schools, elementary, secondary, and higher education. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you have done and now do for the children and adults of this world. Nikos Kazantzakis, a renowned but somewhat controversial writer of Greek literature, said that true teachers are those who use themselves as bridges over which they invite their students to cross. Then, having facilitated their crossing, joyfully collapse, encouraging them to create their own. True teachers absolutely do that, selflessly, generously, and joyfully. And they do something else. The best teachers inspire a belief in their students that they are capable of doing anything, literally anything. An encounter with one of these great teachers rekindles a love of learning, renews commitment to accomplish difficult tasks, and animates the energy that makes learning the liveliest pleasure. Thank you.
Hear, hear. I think very few of us have been able to navigate life without the influence of some fabulous teachers, and that was much needed and well spoken at the end of a year where I know that the majority of our teachers feel like those collapsed bridges hanging on by 2 fingernails. So it was a very apt description. Thank you for that, and congratulations on your
Thank you very much.
storied career. And one door closes and another one opens. Thank you, Cindy. We will move on to our board chair report. I have the distinct pleasure of providing information about the outcomes of some of these fabulous teachers that Member Phillips just spoke about. At the end of May, or in May, lots of different awards are handed out for a variety of things. For academics, U.S. News and World Report, the top 6 high schools in Utah are charter schools: Beehive, Intech, New Ames, Ames, Itinerus, and Mazer Prep, in that order. In social studies, National History Day competitions have taken place all over the state, starting in the fall and culminating in those who receive a national qualifying award to be able to go present in Washington, D.C. We have students from, you can't hear me, okay. We have students from American Preparatory Academy, Thomas Edison South, Thomas Edison North, Providence Hall Junior High, Vanguard Academy, Syracuse Arts Academy, and Mountain Heights Academy, who have either a state champion or a national qualifier going to Washington, D.C., virtually this year. Next year, hopefully those will once again return to being in person. In science, we have an e-cyber mission competition that is put on by the federal government. 9 of the 11 state winners from Utah were charter schools. 7 of those were from Channing Hall and 2 from Mountain Heights Academy. Each of those 2 schools had 1 team make it to the regional finalist round. In 7th grade, the Channing Hall Charter School in Draper had the Car Seat Sisters was the name of their project. And for the 9th graders, Mountain Heights Academy had Fire and Air as the name of their project. In English, there is an English Quest competition, and charters were incredibly well represented there as well. For CTE, McKaylee Cannon from the American Academy of Innovation won a CTE scholarship to SLIC. She will be studying to be a neurosurgeon. And in the arts, the Utah State Board of Education, supported by a grant from the Sorensen Legacy Foundation, honored Utah arts teachers and programs this last week. Erin Roundy from North Davis Prep Academy for secondary visual arts instruction. And since there wasn't an awards ceremony in 2020, they also honored Amy Hickenlooper from Early Light Academy for elementary music instruction. But wait, that's not all. We also have our Best of State Awards. K-12 administrator is Carolyn Charette. The charter school for the Best of State is New Ames. And the special education program is the APA Special Education Program. So we have had charter schools in the charter school community have had a nice showing in multiple arenas over the last month or so. So congratulations to all of our charter schools that were named and continue to do good work. The other thing I wanted to share is the process to do a board, to replace a board member or to seat a new board member when somebody's term is up. And as most of you know, my term is up. June is my last meeting. And normally the process takes quite some time, and we haven't gotten a replacement board member until August or September, which is really tricky because that's when we look at all of our new schools, and it's nice to have a full board to be able to do that. So we recommended to the Governor's Education Advisor, Brittany Cummings, that we start that process a little sooner so that we could have everything in place well before August. And I just need to give a shout out to the Governor and the Governor's office and to the associations for providing the lists of names. So each association provides 3 names to the Governor's office. They review those, they select one, and then that person is interviewed by the Senate Education Committee and voted on for approval or not. So I'm pleased to announce that the new charter school board member that has gone through that entire process and was confirmed by the Senate yesterday is Rebecca Cisneros. She's currently at Itinerus Early College, which we just heard about on the U.S. News and World Report top schools, high schools in the state. She is also a former staff to the State Charter School Board from several years ago. She has had a literal seat at every spot on the table when it comes to school authorizing, and I think she is going to be an absolutely strong charter member, and we'll welcome her as soon as all of the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed. And that concludes my board chair report. If I missed anything, Director Lambert, please pick that up.
I believe you caught it all. So it's wonderful. It's that time of year where we get to celebrate. And it's just wonderful to see all of the hard work come to fruition in our schools. I know that they've had a rough couple of years, but despite that, they have just done really wonderful things. And so that's wonderful to see. So my director's report, I'm going to do the boring numbers. We had 7 separate trainings done by staff or your assistants from board members. Just some highlights. We have our director's monthly meeting with 82 attendees and 48 additional views. This is, of course, in the April meeting. We held our last director's meeting for the year just this Monday, and so I'll report on that in June. But we give our directors at least somewhat of a break. We pretend to anyway, during the summer. We also had a board member monthly meeting with not as strong of attendance. When we were looking at this, it had 12 attendees and 11 views. Our business administrator training had 20 attendees and 32 additional views. Where we get a lot of the additional views is teachers. We're able to give some credit to the teachers so that this can help them with their relicensure. And so we don't get a lot that attend in person, but we have a lot of views afterwards. So if you look just in the month of April, we had 344 total attendees from our charter schools. And in addition to that, we went out to 2 schools and did specific governing board trainings to those schools. So it's a little higher than the 344. The oversight, we had 7 new complaints, and we were able to close 3 overall. In compliance monitoring, we have 3 new ones, and we closed 2. Notice of concerns, we had 1 new one, we resolved 2. The reason why it's not that we're negative, it's because we had current other ones that were already open, and we have 4 schools on warning and no schools on probation. In visits, we had 27 visits in the month of April. 19 of those were in person, so it is a joy to be able to get out physically and seeing the schools. And then we had 8 that still were able to use that virtual option. Again, we just are able to achieve a lot of different things with these visits, as always. I do want to draw your attention, as in our bylaws and what you have also passed in your budget, we have contracted with an external evaluator to do a board evaluation, which according to our bylaws, one is done every even numbered year. And we have contracted with the National Charter Schools Institute, and they are also working with the 305 Education Group. And their goal is to provide a comprehensive understanding of strengths and areas of growth. So there's 4 different areas that they're talking about: critical understanding of responsibility, active engagement with the content, conducive environment that listens to the community, responsive decision-making with a focus on legal requirements and school outcomes. They are currently, we have been reaching out to the schools and community. They're going to be doing surveys and interviews, but they're also going to be contacting you. So they asked that I introduce this so that you know when they call you, this is who they are. and please, engage with them. That will help your board evaluation to be more robust. And so they will be shortly contacting you to speak with you. And then I did want to give you an update on OEK and FDK. So OEK stands for Optional Extended Kindergarten. That has been a grant and funds that we've had been able to provide schools for quite some time. FDK stands for Full Day Kindergarten. It is the new funding stream that was provided by the legislature this last session. So what they did when they added, I believe it was 10 million to the 12 million, sorry. Got that extra too. The 12 million that was added, it wasn't actually added in the specific OEK funds. It was a new funding stream. And so we just wanted to report to you that, and you did see this on consent as well, but we just also want to let you know how it interacted with the FDK funds. So we were able to fund all of those who received the funding last year, which was 33 charter LEAs. They were all funded again this year. And I don't know if you remember, but last year was the first year we were able to fund all of the schools that applied, because last year's funds had been increased. In the past, we had not been able to, we always had to choose those that met the requirements and had the most need. So we were able to fund, continue those fundings. Then through the FDK funds, we were able to fund 19 additional charter LEAs. So quite a few number of charter LEAs that wanted the funds did receive it. Unfortunately, there were 7 who did apply for the funds, but were not able to get those funds. But pretty large percentage of those who were interested. So that is the good news. And we just want to thank those at USBE who really worked with us and helped us be able to get as much funding as possible to the schools and to charters. And they were very good at reaching out to us and having those discussions so that charters were not left out or forgotten. So we thank them, and that ends my report.
Thank you, Director Lambert. Just a follow-up, you mentioned the training that has been provided and also best practices sharing as part of that training. It was interesting when Mrs. Cisneros was being interviewed by the Senate Education Committee. Both of those items were questions from sitting senators. What kind of training is available, and how do you share best practices? And so I think in order to close that loop, I will send some of that information over to that committee so that they can witness that firsthand. So thank you for presenting on that.
And in fact, we could give you probably even more impressive numbers for the year. April and May, we start winding down a little bit. So we've had actually more trainings in other months and more interactions. It's just we're hitting testing season, we're hitting the end of the school year. And so those are a little lower numbers than even what's typical.
I wonder if doing an annual report was another question that was asked. We have done an annual report for as long as I can remember, but I wonder if we did an annual report specifically with the trainings and that information, that might be something that we can send over that would be helpful.
It is on our calendar. I just don't remember which month we set it to be on, but
Okay.
yeah, we can move that up if that's the desire.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our consent calendar, which contains items that we've all reviewed in advance. These items don't typically warrant a discussion. However, if somebody would like to pull an item off the consent calendar, if a board member would like to do that, you are more than welcome to. On our consent calendar, we have our April 14th minutes, our monthly financial report. For fund and program accounting certification, code requires that new charter schools certify to their authorizer that they're using fund and program accounting methods. And we have 2 schools with certifications that are recommended for approval, and that would be Ascent Academies of Utah and Beehive Science and Technology Academy. We also have Monticello Academy in good standing. Our staff did a comprehensive review, and they looked at 6 different areas: charter fidelity, student academic achievement, board governance, student enrollment, the financial health of the LEA, and compliance to requirements. At the end of the review, there was sufficient evidence that Monticello Academy earned the State Charter School Board's designation of good standing. We also have Odyssey Charter School, and they would like to update their bylaws to no less than 5 and no more than 7 members. And a couple of other updates in term year calculations and making a quorum consist of 50% of board members rather than stating the actual number of board members needed. We also have an articulation agreement between Rockwell Charter High School and John Hancock Charter School, where the 8th grade John Hancock students would be able to enter Rockwell Charter High School's 9th grade student body, and that agreement would become effective in 24-25 school year. Those are the items on the consent calendar, and I am looking for a motion.
I'd like to move to accept the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion from Member Phillips. Do we have a second?
I can second.
Second from Member Spiker. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is an amendment request for Vanguard Academy. Ms. Stephenson will be presenting information to us, and then we will proceed after that.
Thank you, Chair Tonks. Good morning, board members. I am here today to present about the bylaw amendment request for Vanguard Academy. The amendment itself is rather simple. They are asking to increase their board members from 7 to 9, and they have identified those new members as Mr. Daniel Jessup and Mr. Ben Robinson. While there is not a major concern about changing that number, we did have some concern about the bylaws that are included in the amendment application, and that approval of this amendment from 7 to 9 board members would be approving these bylaws as well. We did, from their application, share where we had concerns and asked some questions, and we did give the school the opportunity to respond. Mr. Charles Reynolds was the one who responded to those questions. The first one, we took 2 different sections of their bylaws. One addresses quorums and one addresses adverse interest. Under the quorums, it reads that a 2/3 majority of directors shall constitute a quorum at the meeting. In absence of a quorum, the majority of the directors present may adjourn the meeting to another time without further notice. If a quorum is represented at, and then they've now changed it to the rescheduled meeting, any business may be transacted that might have been transacted at the meeting as originally scheduled. The directors present at the meeting represented by a quorum may continue to transact business until adjournment, even if the withdrawal of some directors results in representation of less than a quorum. In addressing what is meant by that, Mr. Reynolds basically explained that they replaced adjourned with reschedule to clarify that when business as described in the previous sentence of Section 5 is transacted, the business would be handled in a rescheduled meeting, not at an adjourned meeting. One of the concerns that we had was the last sentence, which was the directors present at the meeting may continue to transact business until adjournment, even if that withdrawal results in representation of less than a quorum. That was not addressed by Mr. Reynolds. The second piece here, adverse interest, it says, in the determination of a quorum of the directors or in the voting, the adverse interest of a director shall not disqualify the director or invalidate his or her vote. Again, Mr. Reynolds explained that he understood the original intent of Vanguard's board in this section was that if any adverse interest exists that requires a director to recuse themselves, it would not invalidate his or her vote on non-conflicted items that they would be voting on. That is not clear in this bylaw, that it is referring to those non-conflicted items, and so that is where staff's concern remains on that. The next part of their board laws, we questioned if this was referring to same or different board members. As they adjusted some of the language in their bylaws, they went through, obviously they made that change from 7 to 9, and named them as board chairperson or board vice chairperson, and they had updated that language to include chairpersons. Later on in their bylaws, they refer to people as directors that they had originally called presidents. And so we have chair people, we have presidents and vice presidents, and we have directors listed throughout the application, and it was not clear going through who is considered a chair or a person of the board, who is a director, and who is a president or a vice president. In addressing this, Mr. Reynolds says that they're all referring to different people. The directors refers to the board members, and the officers refer to school staff members. And so there is a concern that we have staff members included in the board bylaws. Which brings us to our last concern that we wanted to bring up with our board today. There were a number of school positions, or what appeared to be employees of the school positions and roles included in the bylaws. And this the bylaws that were included in the application did reference others at the end. They have since cleaned that others part up and removed that from their finalized copy, but this was what was included in their actual application to the State Charter School Board. As you can see here, the bylaws now include roles for a curriculum director, an assessment coordinator, a student services director, and Mr. Reynolds did say they have also added a special programs director that is an employee of the school. In his response, he said that the Vanguard Board was looking at the officers section as school staff members and added those additional positions to the bylaws. The others that were listed in the original redline version allowed them to determine if there were other positions that should be listed. The Vanguard Board did add that other school staff position, as mentioned, the special programs director. And as I noted, they have attached a clean copy, though this is what was included in their application. That concludes the concerns that we have. So going back to that, the amendment itself is to increase their board members from 7 to 9. It would add those new members, Daniel Jessup and Ben Robinson, but we did want to make you aware of those changes to the bylaws as you have your discussion today. Thank you, Chair Tonks.
Thank you, Ms. Stephenson, for the presentation. Board members, let's take a few minutes and have a discussion, and then we have the opportunity to ask any questions of staff, and then after that, we'll invite Vanguard up and we'll have an opportunity to ask questions of them. So, board members, what are your thoughts on the amendment request? or your questions for Ms. Stephenson? Yes, go ahead, Member Phillips.
Question of staff and then just a more general question.
You got it.
So I'm wondering, have we been provided, the red line that I'm looking at still has the administrative specialists listed under the officers. Is there an updated one that I have access to?
The updated one includes those members
As
under
well?
officers.
Okay.
Correct.
So then I just have maybe a formal question, and I don't know if this is for Director Lambert or another staff member. Are we in a position, because I'm personally very pleased that the school is moving to add some additional board members, because this is something that we as a board wanted them to do and have asked them to do. I am concerned about those items, especially Article 4.3, Article 6.5, and Article 5 with the specialists, administrative specialists. I'm concerned about those aspects, particularly the ones that need clarification about the adverse interest or about business continuing and transacting without a quorum. Are we able to provisionally accept with specified detail about what provisionally means? Are we able to provisionally accept part of this request?
Can I ask you a clarifying question? Maybe Director Lambert understood better than I did. Are you asking, can we approve a portion of this but not all of it?
Yes, or approve it, or perhaps nuanced, approve the request pending a sort of language wordsmithing of particular sections about which we have continuing concerns.
Okay, let's go to Director Lambert or AAG Jones, and then we'll come back to you, Member Smith.
If David wants to speak, but so what is happening is that a school is, right now we have a contract, and the contract can only be amended upon agreement by both parties. And so what we have is a school that's coming and making a request saying that they want to amend this, and we can agree, or we could maybe propose something different, or we could do use of provisional, or we could deny. I mean, that's our choice. It could also go the other way. Like, we could decide that, hey, we would like to suggest a school make a change to their contract, and we could take it to them, and they could have those exact same options. So there is different options as long as both parties are in agreement and it's within law. You could do that. But it looks like David's on, and he can speak better to this than I can.
All right, AAG Jones, would you enlighten us?
I think what's on the agenda is whether or not that the State Charter School Board would agree to a charter agreement change that will allow them to increase their board of directors from 7 to 9. So you could have a motion that would allow for that with conditions on it, if you would like. And so you talked about provisional acceptance, I think, but you can make your motion condition with conditions, that if that's what you'd like.
Thank you for that clarification. Member Smith?
I'd like you, Member Phillips, applaud the desire for this board to increase their membership. But like you, I have significant reservations about all of the things that you outlined. But I think the question of, can we approve part of this, or can we approve this and not that, that might not be the best question to ask. I think you should ask, what should we do? And I think, for me at least, the concerns are deep enough that I would say, just kick this back to, to hammer out these issues and come back to us in a month. That to me seems like a more prudent course of action when there are significant devils in the details, as it may be. Anyway, that's just my thinking.
Okay, thank you, Member Smith. Other input or comments from board members? Phillips?
Is the school here in a position to, is it appropriate for them to answer questions about some of these concerns we have related to their bylaws?
Yes, yes, and I had stated that we would call them up after
Okay,
we
very
kind of
good,
get our
very good.
concerns
Yep, okay.
corralled,
Thank you.
then it will be easier for them to answer those. Any other board member comments? Member Spiker?
I appreciate Member Phillips' comments and Member Smith's about just us being aware of what is necessary to move forward. And my only concern about waiting another month is that does that hinder the work of the board? We're asking them to add these members in order to do important work necessary. And then, so I throw that out as something for us to consider as we're continuing to have the conversation.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other board members? Okay, at this point, we'll ask Vanguard Academy to come up to the tables and do a quick introduction of who you have with you. And then we will have board members be able to ask you questions. And if you'll turn your mics on and just introduce who's here, that would be helpful for us.
Yes, once again, it's really nice to see your faces. I'm Grace Mitchell. I am the Vanguard Board Treasurer. I know many faces that have actually helped us tremendously through this process. I'm here with our legal counsel, Mr. Dave Mortensen, and we have our director, Mr. Charles Reynolds, and also our board chair, Mr. Kent Johnson.
Thank you. Board members, we now have an opportunity to ask our questions of Vanguard as well. So we will take those questions at this point. Go ahead, Member Phillips.
Well, I want to say, first of all, that I personally, as a board member, am very pleased about the efforts that Vanguard has made to try to increase board members and maybe broaden backgrounds so that there can be a procurement process and financial oversight that is more in compliance with non-conflicted decision-making at the top levels of the institution. So the concerns I have after our presentation from staff and after reading the bylaws as they're now constituted would be in those areas that were highlighted by Ms. Stephenson, namely some kind of wobbly language in adverse interest that doesn't necessarily, I know what adverse interest is, and I think that while it's true that there are times when adverse interest between individuals should not disqualify them from voting on another issue on which they're not conflicted, I'm not sure the language in that particular article explains that properly. I'm also concerned about including as officers some of your administrators. It's unclear whether those administrators would have some kind of a voting right on your board, and that's highly unusual. And so I think clarifying that. And then also, and maybe most importantly, Article 6.5, where the language suggests, whether that was the intent or not, I'm not sure, the language suggests that business and decisions can be made, business can continue without a quorum, which is, of course, illegal. So anyway, those are the concerns I have, though I'm very supportive of approving the increase in the number of board members. So I'd love to hear your response to that, to whomever. I throw that out to whomever it is appropriate to answer.
This is Dave Mortensen, and I'll address some of these, and then others will address some of them as well, Member Phillips. Thank you for your questions. Let me start by saying that the red line that you have are the changes that are being proposed. It appears to me that some of the concerns that staff are expressing are not language that's intending to be amended today, but rather is language that exists as it is today. So when you look at, for example, you pointed out Article 6.5 and the concerns with the last couple of sentences in that. Not approving the amendment today will not change that language. We're not proposing to change that language. And by the way, I don't speak on this point for Vanguard, but I'm sure that the Vanguard members will say they are happy to address the concerns with this language in a subsequent amendment, and we'll present that right away. We can have that come up. The amendment today is addressing simply the red line language. If staff and this board have concerns with other aspects of the bylaws that aren't being changed today, but rather are in existence today, we are happy to make changes and clarify that. So when you look at Article 6, Paragraph 5, and the concern is about what transactions are occurring by conflicted individuals, we don't want that to be an ambiguity at all. And that's not being addressed by this amendment at all. If you were to deny the request to amend it, it would stay just as it is written right here. And so rather what we would ask is that you grant the amendment to increase the board members' numbers from seven to 9, and then task the board with going back and fixing this ambiguity in Article 6.5 that you're concerned with. We don't want there to be a concern at all. And so if you task the board with doing that, we will absolutely do that. We will address all of the concerns that have been raised. All we're asking for today is to address the issue of 7 to 9. And then with respect to the individuals that you identified, we don't want there to be any ambiguity. The officers are not members of the board. There's no ambiguity. We don't want there to be any ambiguity about that at all. So when you look at Article 5 and you see officers, and you see the addition of some new officers, those are officers, those are individuals who will be employed by Vanguard, who will be providing services to Vanguard. They will not be members of the board. Those are addressed in Article 4, where you see the directors. Those are the board members. And so there is a distinction. We want that to be clear. There's a distinction between the board members, Article 4, and the employees and officers, Article 5. And again, if there's any ambiguity, we don't want there to be, and we are happy to address that. Today's request is simply to change from 7 to 9 and to note that we are adding a few new officers that are not board members. That's all we're looking for today. If you have other questions about anything, these wonderful people will answer those questions.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Chair Tonks,
Yes.
Eric here. I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead, Member Olson.
Thanks, Chair Tonks. This is more of a comment than a question. It's probably a comment for Mr. Morton. Going to something that you just said, one of the concerns that I have about the change that's made to the officers section then ties into a section that the school is not proposing to change, which is language about the executive committee in Article 4, Paragraph 11. The way that this is now changing is you have the director of the school, the principal, vice principal, comprising the executive committee. And when you read Section 11 in Article 4, it proposes, actually it says, this is the original version, that the executive committee shall have the full authority to undertake the duties and powers of the board. The obvious concern there is that the school is, we've already expressed before that there's some real governance concerns that we have about how the school is being operated. We've specifically addressed governance concerns with the board itself. But when you now have a provision that basically allows the executive committee, the principal, to take over full authority and act in the stead of the board, it creates, I think, an even greater governance problem. So my suggestion to you is that you look at this really closely as you consider going back and revising these bylaws after this meeting to make sure that the school is set up for success in terms of governance in a way that's going to avoid conflicts of interest and ensure that you have a board that's properly constituted and is able to govern the school without that governance being usurped by the principal or an executive committee. So again, not necessarily questions, more comments, but hopefully that's something you can look at going forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Member Olson.
May I address that?
Sure,
Member-
Mr.
or Chair?
Mortensen, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Member Olson. That's a very good point. I had not noticed that issue in these bylaws before. These are in the existing bylaws. It's not part of the amendment today. I agree, that needs to be addressed, and we will work with staff during this next little time to address that and make sure that there's no ambiguity about the fact that the staff are not operating as the board. The board operates separate and oversees the staff, and we'll make that change, Member Olson. But again, I hope that the need to change that won't interfere with the fact that the changes we're trying to accomplish today are intended to address concerns that have been raised, that we're trying to address, and that doesn't mean we'll be done. Clearly, we won't be done after today. We just hope that the need to make those changes won't really be, won't stop us from doing what we need to do today. And then the last thing, I would think the intent of this provision is to empower them to do what the board has instructed them to do. Not to act as the board, but rather when the executive committee is giving instruction from the board to do things, that they act to do as the board wants them to do. But that needs to be clarified, and we will do that in our very next proposed amendment.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I support what Member Olson said. It gets really murky when the governance and management pieces are jumbled up in that manner. So thank you for your response. Director Lambert.
So if I can just clarify where some of our concern is coming in. So if you look at the very beginning of Article 5 under officers, so originally it had that the officers shall be the president and vice president, and that's also one of the changes that you had made, that's what used to be the chairperson and vice chairperson of what the terms were. So it was here that the officers were the chair and vice chair, and now it's being changed to the director and assistant director. So it's being changed, officers. This was intended to be like your executive, your chair and your vice chair. It's now being changed that those officers are now staff. And so that, I would say, that's where we started going, wait a minute, this looks like maybe it was a misunderstanding of what's being said here, that these are bylaws. This is setting forth, what is your chair and vice chair. Those are typically your officers, and then have that there, but this is expanding it into staff.
May I? Thank you. I don't think the intent there was to change the way it was operating previously with respect to the officers. It's changing the title. Rather than having the director, who previously Ms. Owens, now Mr. Charles, be the president, they're just identified now as the director, I think, is the intent behind it.
May I clarify? So if you read originally, what it had is the president, and the president was defined as, before that was your chairperson. And then, or one or more vice presidents, which before that was your chairperson. Instead of changing this to chair and vice chair, you changed it to staff members. And so it is changing. It's not changing just titles, it's changing who's actually being put in there. And so that's what we're drawing attention to, that it is actually a significant change, even just by those minor word changes.
Go ahead.
I may be misunderstanding Director Lambert, and I apologize. The organization is intended to function like this. There will be a board of directors that will have a chair and vice chair who oversees the board of directors. Then there will be a separate group who will be the staff, in essence, for the board of directors, who instead of being a president, will now be a director and an assistant director. The prior board, I don't believe, had the title of president. I think it was chair of the board and vice chair of the board. And now previously it was a president, now it's a director. I'm probably misunderstanding, and I apologize.
Yes, so previously, this whole section was referring to what you are now calling your chair and vice chair. And that is what the bylaws previously referred to as president and vice president. Instead of making the change and saying the officers of the corporation shall be a chairperson, one or more chairpersons, a secretary, treasurer, et cetera, it's now changing it to director and assistant director, and then later on, your additions are defining those out as being staff. And so it is changing that the officers of the board are no longer the directors on the board. It is now staff. And it may not have been your intent, but it definitely needs to be cleaned up. And so that typically we don't see staff laid out in bylaws. That's just typically not done. Usually what you're seeing here is the section about the officers of the board, namely the chair and vice chair, or what you used to call the president and vice president. And so that's where we have concerns. Also, while there may not be changes in some of these other things, we just wanted to point them out that as you're considering the other changes, what that might, some of the interplays of. We also had a few other concerns that were brought to us that we have sent to the school in terms of the bylaws. So there's going to be some fixes in these bylaws.
Thank you, Director Lambert. I think the bottom line on that, and it seems like you're understanding what Director Lambert is saying at this point, that there needs to be a bright line between the governance and the management, and this mixed it all up together, and probably unintentionally, and so having that direction should be helpful to you. Member Phillips?
Just one other comment, too. I just don't want it to get lost in the shuffle of our discussion, because I think these are true highlighted sections, but the other one that needs to be on your radar is Article 6, Section 5, where we're looking at the fact that the directors present at a meeting, this is the last part of it, represented by a quorum, may continue to transact business until adjournment, even if the withdrawal of some directors results in representation of less than a quorum. Now, certainly directors present at a meeting, according to our state law, may continue to discuss if there's no longer a quorum, but they're no longer able legally to make a decision. And so that's not clear from that language, even though it's not part of the amendment, and I fully agree with what you said, that you're here for a specific amendment. There are some problems that have been highlighted with some of the language there, but I personally don't think it should prohibit us or stop us from moving forward to approve those things that are important for you to try to meet some of the other obligations that we've articulated in our public meetings about the school and its board. But I don't want that to get lost, because I think in the end that will become a concern for us as we're looking. It's a concern to me, because I'm speaking for myself here in this meeting, if those things aren't resolved going forward and we're looking to move the school to a position of, no more warning, the language that needs to be fixed in these bylaws that address conflicts of interest and just address good processes would need to be tidied up, at that point. That would just be my opinion. And Chair, I'm ready to make a motion if you are ready for me to.
Are there any other comments from board members online or in person?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment that I agree with you, Member Phillips. It makes sense to allow them to do what we would like them to do, and also instruct them to address what we would like to have addressed in a subsequent amendment, I guess it would require.
Okay, thank you. I just have a brief comment then. I want to get at the heart of the issue and the reason why staff and board members have been concerned about the governance issues with Vanguard Academy is because of the deep conflicts of interest. I don't want that to get lost in all of the detritus of the bylaws and the sections and the articles and all of that. That is the main reason why we have had concerns in the past. It seems to me, when my kids were little and they had to take medicine, I would say, you can do this the easy way or the hard way. The hard way is I hold you down and I give you the medicine. The easy way is you open your mouth and I give you the medicine. Either way, you have to take the medicine. You get to choose the way. It seems to me that with the conflict of interest issue, Sometimes it feels like you're choosing the hard way. You're bringing on more people who have additional conflicts and trying to increase your board with people who have additional conflicts. The easy way, and there may be things that I am missing and do not understand. I will allow for that. However, it seems to me that the easy way would be to add board members who have no conflicts of interest and make sure that that is a majority of your board so that you're not losing a quorum when you're trying to remove the conflicts of interest. That's my perspective, and I did not want the conflict of interest issue to get lost as we go through the other items. Thank you. Member Phillips?
I'd like to move that we accept Vanguard's proposed amendment and give the school a strong directive as a board to adjust and come back to us with an adjusted and amended bylaws that address the concerns that we have expressed in this meeting today.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Phillips. Do we have a second?
I will second that. Chair
Okay, we have
Thompson.
a second by Member Olson. Do we have any discussion to the motion? Member Spiker?
I would just like to see the firm, when we'd like to see that back. So that would be helpful. Yeah, we just add that weeks, I know next month is a little of an interesting meeting, but we could do that, or if we feel like that it needs a little bit more time. I just think this is really important to get this rectified and ironed out before the beginning of the next school year.
Director Lambert, what would be an appropriate timeline?
Well, okay, so you do have a meeting in June. That, as you know, is going to be off-site, and it's going to be a shorter meeting. You then typically do not hold meetings in July, and you are adopting your calendar later on today. And then August is typically when we hear both expansion requests and new school proposals. And then September, we are tentatively looking at that might be kind of like the board retreat. So none of the meetings coming up are going to be great meetings. If I can, I also just want to point out, we've been focusing a lot on the 7 to 9. I do not know if the number of meetings, if that is a change. I do know that the authorizing committee has had concerns when schools have proposed to only meet 6 times a year. That is what is in here. I do want to bring that attention to that, just knowing some of the discussions that have been in that committee meeting with other schools.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on a table. We're in discussion. Go ahead, Member Phillips.
I wonder if the concerns that Member Spiker has articulated could be addressed by two things. Just some housekeeping instructions to the school that staff could give, as well as if the adjusted bylaws are brought before the amending and authorizing committee and they approve, if it could just be on a consent agenda in one of these upcoming meetings. Because I think that would be a slick way to handle it, because I think it appears to me that the school is clear about what we're concerned about, and that we could have our committee work address that. And if they felt good about those bylaws, I think that the rest of the board would probably feel good about putting it on a consent agenda and voting that way.
That seems like an elegant solution. Vice Chair Bowles.
The danger of looking at any piece of the bylaws means we're looking at all of it, obviously. So we start looking at all of it, even though you've brought an amendment just to increase the number of directors and to change how your officers work. We're looking at several. In the motion, my only part of the motion that I want to clarify, which I think is a good motion, but I want to clarify because the motion said, and the other issues we've discussed today. I want to make sure we know what those issues are so that there's direction in that, so that we're saying to staff and asking Vanguard, will you immediately work cooperatively with the staff to begin that work so that it can happen in a timely way and that we can look at those. So what are those issues? Among them is that the officers are officers, not directors of the corporation. It's a different role. We would like to see that addressed. Others are going to add to this list, I hope. But if we're making a list, I just want us, if we're approving this motion, to know what those other things are. One of those is that a quorum must be present in order for voting to take place, for decisions to be made. And if you don't have a quorum at one point, you stop. You may have a meeting, but you're gonna and talk, but you may not vote and make decisions relative to, except to adjourn. Yeah, well, yeah, you can do that. So, what are some of the other issues that we had? I just want to make sure we've got them all down. Those were two primary. What were the notions of meeting times, numbers of meeting times? Sorry, Michelle.
Go ahead,
No, it's
Member
okay.
Smith.
I'm just jumping in because I don't know when you can see me or not. Yes, number of times of meeting is a serious concern. It has been an ongoing concern in our committee. So I don't remember for clarity whether that was addressed in the original motion that we are specifically not granting that request to move to only 6 meetings per year. And then I wonder whether we might be able to amend the motion in some way to clarify that the new board members should not be individuals who are conflicted or who we don't anticipate, who would not be reasonably anticipated to have conflicts.
Thank you.
Member Phillips?
As we're listing the issues that we have concerns about as part of this discussion, so that the motion can perhaps be, follow through or be passed. One that I don't want to get lost is what Member Olson said, which was just a clarification on the role of the executive committee and who is part of it as different from the officers of the, or I should say the presidents and or officers of the board. That's typically, when we talk about the officers of an institution, we're typically talking about the board members who are in leadership, but we don't necessarily have to be, so there are different lists of officers. So I think clarifying the concern that we have expressed by Member Olson about what appears to be sort of an autonomy of the executive committee that's no longer made up of board of directors. And that's, I think, important. And then also just clarifying the adverse interest in Article 4, Number 3, so that it's clear that it's clear what it is and what it disqualifies or allows someone to do in that circumstance.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments by board members during our discussion period? Member Phillips, will you restate the motion? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Might it not be cleaner to let this motion fail and then restate it again, or start with a new motion?
I think that's
yes.
true.
Yes, let's do that. All in favor of this motion, say aye. Any opposed?
No.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, lots of different answers there, but they all mean no. That motion
Right, sorry, I mean, no.
fails. And, okay, that was funny. That was good. Okay, so let's try again.
I move that we approve Vanguard's amended bylaws with a directive to the school to return to the SCSB an amended version of the bylaws that within a reasonable period of time as determined by staff that addresses the following. Article 6.5 related to business continuing without a quorum. Article 5 related to officers of the institution, and in particular, how that list relates to other sections of the bylaws about the executive committee, Article 4.3 related to adverse interest, and then finally, the part of the bylaws that discusses the number of meetings annually that the school will hold.
Okay, we have a motion. I'm glad these meetings are recorded so that we can make sure we don't miss anything. Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Phillips, a second by Member Smith. Any additional discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? That motion passes unanimously and hopefully provides you with some clear guidance and directions so that you can move forward as a school. Thank you. And I'm just going to take a moment of privilege here as the chair to make sure that for those watching or those listening online, that this process may seem messy. We make a motion and change it and vote no on something that we decided that we were going to make a motion on, and then we make a new motion. And I wonder if those unfamiliar with what governance looks like, that may be a little bit confusing. And so I wanted to clarify that this is what good governance looks like. We have differences of opinion, we have disagreements, we do things wrong, we don't get it completely accurate the first time that we do it. There's a reason why we don't have a dictatorship on the state charter school board. I don't just get to make all the decisions myself. We have, in fact, I don't get to vote on anything as the chair. My job is to run the meetings and to move things along. We have 7 people with 7 differences of opinion, supported by staff, who are able to wrestle. And what you're seeing is the wrestling portion of how we come to consensus to be able to make a motion and move it forward. And I know sometimes I'll get calls from people and say, well, it seems so simple. Why didn't you just do X, Y, or Z? Well, this is what due process looks like. We have a process and we get to wrestle with these items in the public sphere so that you get to witness that as well. And so I just wanted to clarify that process piece for those who may be watching or listening. We will, and thank you Vanguard Academy for being here today. We will move on to our next amendment request, which is Canyon Grove Academy. We'll follow the same process. Ms. Stephenson will provide an overview presentation. We'll review the amendment, have discussion. If Canyon Grove is here, we'll invite them up to the table to answer questions from board members, and then we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Ms. Stephenson.
Thank you, Chair Tonks. All right, we will next be presenting about the material change to their charter for Canyon Grove Academy. So to offer you some background, CGA offers a hybrid program that's targeted to families who want more choice and more flexibility in their children's or their child's education and more control over that education. And really their program is designed to bridge the gap that exists between homeschool and more traditional public school. It is noted that this type of program has not shown positive academic outcomes, which is why they cannot be considered under the COVID distance pilot that was allowed over these past 2 years. However, CGA performs on par with other schools with a similar type of program and model. Nevertheless, this type of program has a very healthy market demand, and since implementing this program, CGA has been able to grow their enrollment, and the school is currently at or even slightly above capacity. So what the request is a new charter agreement that would include provisions to run a distance program and other material changes to their educational program. When we say material change, we are of course speaking about different than what was originally authorized. These changes are a major departure from that original charter agreement that you entered into with Canyon Grove Academy. It is noted as well that CGA has been implementing these elements in program for quite some time. And it is also worth noting that if these are not approved, CGA would need to make major changes to their current practice to return to what the original charter agreement envisioned for this school.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stephenson. Do we have questions or clarifying things from board members for Ms. Stephenson at this time? Go ahead, Dr. Spiker.
Thank you. So is this in response to just a lot of the work that, a big part of not just the pandemic, but the work that, and the conversations that we've had with Canyon Grove over the last year or so in terms of really helping the school thrive under the premises of law, I guess? And
Ms. Stephenson, would you like to take that?
Yes, and then Director Lambert, if I need to add anything. Looking back, this has been something we've been working on with Canyon Grove Academy since right before the pandemic began. And they had come in, I believe it was actually March, and we were addressing that they were out of compliance with their original charter agreement, and they were asking for that material change at that point. It was a very weird time, and then everybody was suddenly online, even though they were supposed to then be back in person while they were fleshing these things out. And so, since you gave that COVID distance pilot to everyone, we encouraged them to participate in that as well, which gave that flexibility for everyone to operate online. And then at the end of that pilot period, we would look at the academic outcomes, and if they were as good or better than what they were experiencing in seat over those past 2 years for the brick and mortar students, then they were automatically granted that amendment. And that was our hope with this school. Where their academic outcomes were lower, they were not able to qualify for that automatic amendment, which brings them here today. As you noted, as we have been working through this and providing support to them, they have engaged with a mentor and have increased some of their practices and different ways that they are operating as a school leadership and providing that training to their academic support personnel.
That was very helpful background. Director Lambert, do you have anything to add? Okay, other comments from board members?
May I ask a question too? Because it's important to me, and it's just my vote, I can't speak for everyone, but it's important to me as I make a vote that whatever I would do for one school, I would do for every school. And I want to be fair and even, that I have a real reason, so that I'm not, I'll do it for you, I won't do it for you. It's really important to me that I have a consistent criteria that we use. So what are our criteria for granting a school a change of a charter to a distance or online? I know you've talked a little bit about it, but just help to make sure that I understand that.
So I am trying to think, we've had a couple of schools that have added a distance program. We haven't had a school where it's become their whole program. And I would have to say for those other schools where this board has approved those distance programs, that those programs are very similar to what Canyon Grove has run. And I don't know if there was much discussion or criteria on those. But there has been, to my knowledge, at least two I can think of right now where it was granted a program in addition to their in-seat. In terms of the COVID pilot, that was an automatic amendment where the board said that we wouldn't review we would just automatically stamp approval. The criteria was that we couldn't see decreased, outcomes, and that they would, if they have in-seat and not in-seat, that they needed to be on par with each other, and that their overall in-seat couldn't be so low, because one way that they could be on par is if you decrease both of them, then they can be on par. That is, you may remember, I think it was last month or the month before, we had New Ames, where we really went through with them looking at the different data. They did meet that, and so it was just that automatic approval. Canyon Grove doesn't meet that, but that doesn't mean that you can't grant this amendment if that's what you desire.
Okay. So let me just clarify so that I understand, because Canyon Grove has an in-seat program or no? None. But were they originally an in-seat program?
So this is a long story. Just quite simply, when they first started, they started as Quill Run, primary, something like that. And there was a lot of challenges that they faced right off the bat. And since then, they've been doing a lot of just trying to find different ways to be able to find where they can be successful. They started this program by just adding it as a program, and they had an in-seat program fully on in-seat. A few years ago, they were taking a look at that and just, it's always hard and to duplicate kind of resources. And we get that with other schools where they try to run an in-seat program and then also a distance. It's like you're running two schools. And in some ways, it's really more like two satellites rather than a single school. And so what they did is they got rid of their in-seat and they were just focusing on this distance. Now, with that said, they do have a very small program where you could have students coming and engaging, coming to school all day long. And so they do have some data. I would have to say the data of their in-seat is not positive. That their data for their non-in-seat is actually stronger. Their distance is stronger than their in-seat. But you're looking at a very small N size. So I don't know, it's kind of hard to say whether or not they have an in-seat at all. Am I answering the question?
Yeah. So are the distance students are performing, you said, though, at a similar rate to like schools?
So if you look at similar type of programs, so I mentioned a couple of other programs that where this board has approved and them to run those, or just there's a couple in districts that run similar type of programs. If you look at those, this one runs basically on par, give or take a little bit.
All right, thanks. And I just want, my other premise is I also recognize, and in my value too, that charters were partially, we brought, supported the opening of charters in the state of Utah because they could be flexible and pivot and do new things. So that's also important. I'm just expressing my value as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from board members or staff?
I have a
Hold on just one second, Member Smith. Member Castillo, or sorry, Staff Member Castillo. We just promoted you or something.
Vice Chair Bowles, would you mind speaking into the mic because we can't hear you? And when I'm transcribing, I kind of need to be able to hear you.
Okay, thank you for that friendly reminder for all of us. Okay, Member Smith, go ahead.
I would just like to point out that I personally feel like it is inappropriate to use the standards for automatic approval of a distance program that we instituted with our COVID policy as a standard for anything else, right? Because, for example, you'll end up not approving, you wouldn't approve existing programs. So I would just like to suggest that having data that is on a par with existing similar programs should be certainly sufficient for us to consider something. Requiring that higher standard would not be reasonable of other applicants or of a school like Canyon Grove. Measuring them against other people who are doing what they're doing is a more reasonable standard, in my opinion.
Okay, any other board member comments? At this point, go ahead, Dr. Spiker.
I just happened to notice in the Exhibit A that under the details specifically about the school in number 6, 6B still states a blended education model where students attend in person. So we'll just want to be sure to, I just notice that as if we decide to move forward. Or would that change? Is that?
And I apologize if I'm using distance we are using distance very flexibly. Yes, the model that they run is a student could attend anywhere from like not at all, or that they can attend for some days, or there's a lot of flexibility offered to families.
I see. I didn't, thank you for that clarification. I made the leap that part was leaving and the school was going to a fully online delivery. So thank you for that. Yeah, that's all the right questions at this moment.
Okay, let's invite Canyon Grove up at this point. If you'll come to the table and then push the speak button on the microphone and introduce yourselves, we'll have time for questions from board members. And thank you for being with us today, Canyon Grove.
Hi, everyone. Kim Goetz, Executive Director.
Jarrett Webster, I'm on the board of directors. That's you.
Rachel Larson, I'm the Reading Specialist and Intervention Team Lead.
Hi, Becky Peely, Director.
Okay, thank you. Board members, questions of Canyon Grove Academy, they are here and look ready to answer any questions that we have. Go ahead, Member Phillips.
Thanks so much for coming and welcome. It's my understanding that this is kind of, as other board members have alluded, this is a process begun long ago by this school before COVID and is now a culmination of a real effort to try to meet the requirements of this board and also of our amending and authorizing committee, maybe over a long period of time. Would you kind of give us a sense of what your hopes have been for this process and where you feel you've achieved kind of coming to terms with what we have requested?
So I have an interesting perspective because I was put on the board right about the time this all started, so about 2 years ago. And 75–80% of our board meetings have been all about the feedback that we've gotten from staff and from the board here. And our hope has been to create something unique that we feel we have at Canyon Grove while following the guidelines and the things that we need to, legally hit, and also all of the feedback that we've received from staff. And all of you are familiar with that process, but we've engaged with multiple advisors to help us along that path. And so our hope has been that we've been able to maintain who we are, offering a unique opportunity for families looking for something different, while also following the guidelines given to us.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Okay. Okay, Member Spiker.
Thanks.
Well, we have them up here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious because this is exciting, and also I think the reality that many schools of the conversations that we're having in terms of what worked during the pandemic that we want to continue, because there was lots that we learned that I think disrupted the way that we were engaging in teaching and learning that really we want to keep. So seeing that you found this to be really beneficial, it was such a a proactive boost to your program, as we can see by numbers. And oh, sorry, I hit my flashlight. See that what happens when you're touching things. Okay, so what kind of what training supports? What enabled your teachers to be successful with their digital instruction? And because I think that would be beneficial for lots of folks to hear in terms of your model. I'm curious myself.
Great questions. And I don't think there's one simple, easy answer for that. I think because we'd already been, I think there was two things. One, we had the experience, we'd already been doing it. Our scores just kept on climbing through COVID. Our early literacy scores jumped 17 points during COVID. So we kept doing phenomenal things, which we were excited about. But I think there's two factors. One, my staff is experienced and have been doing this way for a period of time. But two is our families, because we have families who chose to do this. they were doing it and they were on board. Other families were thrust into it and didn't really have too much choice there. So I think honestly that it's my phenomenal team and the amazing things they did, but it's also our amazing families and the fact that they chose it. I think that had a big impact on it too. But we really focus on data and we really focus on Tier 2 instruction. We did a lot of that via Zoom, and that was huge for us as well. Yeah.
Just be a little plug that I would highly recommend in terms of it being conference season, that it would be really beneficial for your team to think about presenting a session or a workshop on those exact strategies and tools that worked. Because I think schools across the state who are continuing to want to do this or are saying, no, it did not work and we're leaving it. Yeah. I don't know, and in the spirit of your school, because it elevates the work that you're doing and to the board and to folks on the state level.
Thank you. That is a very kind comment. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from board members for Canyon Grove? If not, then let's bring the discussion back.
I have one.
Oh, go ahead, Member Smith. I'm sorry,
just
you're,
really
you're
wanted-
behind me. I'm not purposely trying to ignore you.
It's fine. I just wanted to give Canyon Grove, one, recognition that this has been a very long and very arduous process. And we're just really glad that we've had the chance to work with you guys. And the other thing I wanted to do is give them an opportunity to tell us anything else they would like to before we proceed with this.
Wow, Michelle, that's a big question. I think it has been a long, arduous process, and I think it's had so many challenges. But I think for me, the best part that's come out of this is the communication. I think as we've learned to talk to each other a little bit more and a little bit better, I think that's helped us to figure out exactly what the needs are. And I think it's helped you to figure out exactly who we are and what our goals are. I think so often human nature is we look at other people and think, oh, you're doing something you shouldn't be, and we think they're the enemy. And I think when we can come together and really work together, I think we've been able to do magical things. So I've been really grateful for the support at the end of all of this, especially from Greg and from Marie. They've been great, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's bring the discussion back to the board as we consider a motion here. You know, one of the things I'm going to miss the most about not being on the state charter board is saying, go ahead, Member Phillips.
I think it's because nobody else wants to make that first motion because it almost always gets voted down. And so I feel like I'm kind of the guinea pig. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move that the board approve Canyon Grove's amendment.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I would love to second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Phillips, a second by Member Smith. Any discussion to the motion? Yes, Vice
If we
Chair Bowles.
approve today, is there additional process at school that Canyon Grove has to go through? Or, because I know at one point there was a discussion about the State Board of Education had to become involved in a second level of approval, or there's a confusion, had they approved something earlier? So there's confusion about what they're, am I?
So if this amendment required a waiver, we would have to get approval from the State Board of Education. This does not require any waivers from board rules, so you can make that final approval.
Okay, thank you.
That was good clarification. Thank you very much. All right, any other discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? We're going to rule that passes unanimously. Congratulations to Canyon Grove, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
At this point, we will move on to our last amendment request before lunch and turn it over to Ms. Stephenson. We will follow the same process with questions for staff, and then we'll invite Rockwell Charter High School up here for questions. And Ms. Stephenson, over to you.
Thank you, Chair Tonks. Next today, we are discussing another material change, and this is to Rockwell Charter High School. So for the background for you, Rockwell did not formally participate in the COVID distance pilot that has been available for the past 2 years. And so because of that, not formally participating in that, they do not qualify to be considered under that amendment. Rockwell has run an online and distance program before, and in the past with that, they contracted with Harmony Education Services. That created a very similar hybrid program to what Canyon Grove Academy has built. However, this current proposal would not be with Rockwell contracting with a third-party vendor, but rather they're running the program internally in-house. And this would be a material change to their charter agreement. So the summary of the request is that Rockwell would be allowed to offer online options. They would consist of part-time licensed teachers and part-time licensed counselor who would help to run those online classes and maintain contact with their students, and that this would give choice and flexibility to students as to the number of classes they take online. They could do 100% online, 100% in person, or a mix of online and in-person classes. I do know that they have a much more detailed presentation that they're hoping to share as well, and I can answer any questions as well, Chair Tonks.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Ms. Stephenson. I would also like to state a potential perceived conflict of interest as the Executive Director at Mountain Heights Academy, which is a 7th through 12th grade online public charter school. And if there aren't any objections, I am still comfortable running the meeting, and I don't get a vote anyway, so I don't consider it a conflict, but wanted to make sure that I stated that for the record. At this point, if any board members have questions of staff, let's do those, and then why don't you go ahead and come up, Rockwell, and get settled, and then we can take a look at your brief presentation, and then we'll bring it back to the board for questions. And if you will turn your mics on by pushing the speak button and introduce yourselves, it's always nice to know who we have here, and thank you for being with us.
Hi, I'm Misty DeFarius, and I am the director of Rockwell.
Hi, I'm Crystalline Bartier, and I'm a math teacher at Rockwell.
I'm Jennifer Chismedia, and I'm also a math teacher.
Hi, I'm Dale Erling, the board president.
I'm Julie Young, and I'm a board member.
And I don't know, we might have some people online. We had some board members that were going to try to join in that way, so I don't know how that's recognized.
It looks like we have 5 people online. One is probably staff. Oh, it looks like we have somebody there. If you would unmute, sir, and state your name.
Yeah, hi, this is David Persinger. I'm a board member at Rockwell Charter.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. And it looks like you have a quick presentation for us.
We just wanted to start with a quick little video.
One word to describe Rockwell, it's definitely unique.
Probably diversidad, diversity.
One word. There's so many.
Can I give you 2? Open and accepting.
Oh. The one word that I would use to describe Rockwell is family.
One word.
I would say friendly.
I've always described it as opportunity. Opportunity.
Gotta think.
Hang on, this takes a minute.
One word to describe Rockwell would be empowering. Inclusive.
Idiosyncratic, which is unique to individuals.
Creative, perhaps?
I think I gotta just choose fun.
Really good. Really good, that's 2 words. Oh yeah, amazing. Amazing. I love school. Really good school.
We just felt like we need to bring part of our school up here to let you guys know who we are a little bit. But you're good. Thanks, Marie, for doing this. We are here to let you know why are we asking for an online option right now. And we're asking because we need help in bouncing back from 2 large schools, well, 2 district schools opening up in our areas within the last few years, and also with COVID. And we believe that we have something very unique that we can offer, which is being able to have the engagement from everyone across the board. They could be online, they can be on campus, and they can also have a mixture of that in person and online. And because there's so many of our students that participate in our extracurricular activities, MTech, even our UVU classes, that we feel like this would be a better support for them. We did a survey to our stakeholders, and I pulled out the teachers. So this is just showing the 75 students and parents that responded back. And we asked the question, for those that are interested in attending Rockwell next year, who would be interested in doing either the on-site, online, or blended? And you can see with the red is the blended, that about 37% of who answered is interested in being able to at least take 1 or more online classes, with 61% being in person. And what did they say? Why did they ask for us to have this online? These were the 3 top reasons they gave us. Was for better options for mental health. We do have quite a few students who it's hard to see a therapist after the hour of 3 or 4, and so they have a lot of time that they're missing from school, so this would be a way to support them. It works better with work schedules. We actually have a high population of our students who work to support their families. And then also this ability to graduate early, which is something that Rockwell is known for. We always graduate anywhere from about 7 to 10 juniors every year, and for us with a grade level of about anywhere from 75 to about 90, that's a good percentage.
So I'd like to take a moment to share our stakeholders' viewpoints on important elements for online school. Firstly, engagement with instructors and teachers, the ability for students to move at their own pace, also access to various content and subject areas. Students will also be interacting with other students within their courses. There will also be opportunities for students working online to come on campus. Also, parents will have the ability to see students participating in their courses, their homework, and the grades. And then finally, with online school, students will be getting the same experience that an in-person student would get. So for the past 2 years, first for year 1 of online program, we had all teachers teaching the same class on-site and online. We used Canvas as our platform, but there was no set organization on how classes were completed online. Our second year of our online program, no teacher was required to teach on-site and online classes, but all teachers did use Canvas to house their homework for classes so that students that were approved to work with teachers could do so to complete coursework independently and online. So what we've learned from the past are 3 major things. First off is consistency. We'd like consistency on home pages. So for our online courses, you will have consistency on a home page as you see on the slide. There will also be consistency on modules, ways to turn in assignments, tests, and taking attendance. As mentioned previously, separate staff for online and in person. And then engagement is necessary for online, not just checking in. So to give kind of an overview of what this will look like, or what this is looking like, is dedicated part-time teachers and a dedicated part-time counselor. Canvas will be the platform, and there will be 3 attendance options: 100% online, 100% in person, and split time between online and in person.
Okay, so we wanted to address each of the things that we feel are important. And one of the things that's important for our students is to be able to accrue credits faster than perhaps is typically normal. So we have set up a system where students would take a pretest before each unit, and if they can pass that pretest with an 80% or higher, they could skip all of the lessons and go ahead and schedule a final exam with the instructor that would guarantee that they do in fact know the material. If they get less than an 80, they will need to work their way through the module and then go ahead and schedule their exam with their teacher. Classes would be available year-round, so those students who want to graduate early could take some classes over the summer. Teachers would provide a timeline of when we expect things to get done in a timely manner so that they can work at their own pace, but still have guidance on how to do that. It would also allow our many students that take college classes and take classes at MTech to be able to really work with those schedules. As I'm sure everyone knows, college schedules and high school schedules don't mesh. And so sometimes our college students, our students that are doing concurrent enrollment, have gaps in their schedule. And this would allow them to fill those gaps with those other classes that they need to take without having empty time on campus. To encourage engagement in our classes, we're going to have a number of requirements. First, they will need to answer a daily discussion question for each class, and not only they won't be able to see the replies before theirs, they'll have to post their reply and then respond to 2 classmates. So we get that discussion going between classmates instead of being so isolated. They would have pre-recorded video instructions, so they can do it at their own pace. They're not required to log on at a specific time. They can work around their schedule. And then they will have an activity or an assignment to complete to show that they have learned something from that unit. Okay, so we also need to make sure our kids are mastering the content so that we have that same data as we get from our in-person students. With math and English, we use IXL to do that. We do quarterly diagnostics to show growth and to see how much they have grown. So that would be required of our online students as well. And our pretest scores will let us know what they know before the module versus what they learn after the module. For intervention, to ensure that they are meeting that mastery, their part-time teachers will be available to them through Zoom and through online connections. And if a teacher notices that their scores are low, they will be required to reach out and offer them tutoring in person or on Zoom, whichever works out best for the student. Okay, so once again, with our engagement, we want to make sure these kids are engaging. That's a vital and important thing for us at Rockwell, is that we feel like a family and that we're interacting with one another. So if a teacher notices that a student hasn't logged on in 3 days, then they will contact the student, make sure everything's okay, check in with them, see if they need additional support. If their scores are getting low, we will also be contacting them to make sure that they're okay. What can we do to help them? And if they're not responding to our discussion boards, that would be another red flag for us to go ahead and contact our students and to set up that individual time either on campus or via Zoom to help them succeed. Our timeline, our plan is to have all of our core classes, English, math, history, and science, ready to go for first semester by August 1st. We would be leaving chemistry and physics in person only, simply because of the labs required and the hands-on stuff that's required for that. You can't really do that online. And then we also have a mentoring program that helps teach our students life skills, study skills, social emotional learning, and really checks in with them to make sure that there aren't any needs that we need to be aware of. And then the rest of our year would be available by October 1st. Here are just a few testimonials from some of our students that have participated in our online things and how it helped them and why it was important for them to have that option. And then we thought we'd end on a nice, lighthearted note. And thank you for considering us for this. And really at Rockwell, we want you to know that we are all about our students. And what this really comes to is that with the changes in the world, there are unique changes, and we need to be able to change and meet the unique needs of our students that we have right now.
Thank you for your presentation. And at this point, board members, we will open it up for questions of Rockwell. Vice Chair Bowles, go ahead.
All right. So as you described it, I was going to ask a question if this was synchronous or asynchronous, but it sounded like primarily you represented asynchronous kind of learning, but would there be a synchronous option if students wanted to do that as well?
Yes, there would be. Because they'd be signing up as if it was a class itself. And we wouldn't just be signing up in the middle of a term. It would be at the beginning of each term. Like we'd have a set procedure for them to be able to
So
go.
they could Zoom in like we have online folks here, part of our meeting, but they could Zoom in and could do it synchronously as well.
Oh, you mean actively in our classes right now? No, it wouldn't. It would just be our online. Sorry, I misunderstood that question. So it would, if I'm understanding correctly, is that they would just have a separate class. The teacher, the online teachers would be able to have the ability to have the class meet at the same time, but that's why we're doing the recorded. The mentoring one is that they require a face-to-face once a week, so that's the class that they would have the
Okay.
interaction with.
But not zooming into a class that was meeting in person already. Okay. I'm not familiar with IXL. Can you tell me a little bit about IXL?
Yeah, so IXL is a program where students get on and they pick their initial question, and I do the math, so I'm not super familiar with the English, but it asks them questions based on their answers to see exactly how much they know and what their level is in a variety of categories. So we've got like algebraic thinking, measurement, statistics and probability, basically any standards that we have, it will line up with those, and it will let us know individually what each student needs to work on and what they're lacking in and what they're excelling in. So it's a super helpful tool for us.
So that's great. So that almost kind of individualizes your instruction by
Yes.
student. So then the devil's in the details, of course, after that is in how do you then develop, having done that before, it's a huge task to develop curriculum and units, and you referred to having videos available to have all of those things prepared and ready to go so kids, if you say you're missing these areas, how are you tailoring curriculum for each student, and how are those lessons being created to do all of that?
To some extent, it will be catered to each student, but there's also that individual one-on-one time that they can get with the instructor if they're falling behind in a specific area. So like if I have a student who maybe is really struggling with fractions, but no one else in the class is struggling with fractions, I can add an additional lesson for fractions and meet on them one-on-one to get them up to par with the other students.
Okay, and that sounded easy just then, and good for you, because you're probably a really good teacher and you would do a lesson on fractions for students. But I just want the realities of that for us to talk. It's to develop all of those lessons is an immense task that some groups take years to develop to be ready. So, but do you have some of those already started? Are you thinking you'll just get them all done during the summer? How is that going to happen?
One advantage for us is because we have had our stuff online available to students, we have a lot of those already kind of created. We just need to put them into an individual class where it's all accessible for the online teachers.
Okay, all right. So you'll figure that out if that's what you're doing. This is just the voice of reality saying that it's a huge task to do that. That's very difficult to create all of those and to have that done.
I would like to chime in on IXL because not only does it diagnose a student's math and English levels, but then according to that, it gives suggestions as to what skills they should be working on. And so I utilize that a lot where I will just suggest a skill, not really suggest, it's really assign a skill to the student, and they can practice that, and they receive immediate feedback as they're practicing that. So it's not as time consuming to necessarily create a lesson, and they can do that.
Okay, so let's talk one. That's very helpful. So if this student goes through IXL and it says you're not understanding order of operations, so then it suggests that students practice order of operations. Are there videos and practice units built into IXL, or do you as teachers now have to develop lessons to help kids learn order of operations?
So the way it works is when the student enters the skill, they're given their first question, and let's assume they get that question wrong. What they will do is they will explain why that question is wrong and go into exact detail as to the steps that are necessary to be taken to get to the right answer and why that is the right answer.
Okay, but it's not a full lesson necessarily. It's
No.
just kind of, okay. The other pieces, you talked about the coursework that would be available, and obviously if MTech is available to you as well, that could be some CTE work as well. But I didn't see any arts work, which is also required as part of, for graduation requirements in the state of Utah. We also have arts credits that we take in addition. CTE, I didn't see CTE, but maybe I'm making the wrong connection to say that will happen there.
Tanner's part, yes. So for CTE, we do have a teacher who does, and correct me if I'm wrong, Misty, like a business pathway and financial literacy, and he actually offers a lot of his Canvas courses right now through Canvas, and they're very online focused. And so we do have that CTE available already through Canvas and prepared, and he's very eager to jump into this program. I'll leave Misty for the rest.
So part of our timeline that wasn't presented is that we will have art and the fine arts, the CTE. We'll even have ways that they could be able to do some of the PE skills as well.
Right.
Well, what we're hoping to also encourage is that they come also on campus, because we've got a phenomenal drama program that they will never be able to participate online, and our teacher would love to have them come. And so what we're hoping is that that's how we can also engage with students on a different level. But every requirement needed for graduation will be offered on our line. We just felt like we needed to focus first with the core areas, because we can also help that as our credit remedial for our students.
So those would be the things ready by October 1, right?
We'll have an option in each area, not like a full, so like if they wanted to get the full 1.5 credits of fine arts, but there will be one option in fine arts that will be listed on the
Okay,
thing. Yes.
because then I started to hear if you want them to come on campus, then that means everyone will have a hybrid.
They can have a hybrid.
But if they're coming on campus, it would be hybrid then in that case, right?
yes.
But you're going to have also options that you're going to have to develop lessons that would be completely online. That you
Yes.
haven't yet done.
So what Jen Chismadia mentioned was that we have a lot of our teachers already have content on Canvas. Our purpose when we met as a committee was to make sure that there was consistency and organization, because that was one of the huge feedbacks that we got from our parents and our students was, some of you guys want us to go to modules, some of you want us to go here, some of us, we don't know where you even want us to go. So we created the consistency. Once we get that template out to our teachers, which we already talked with them yesterday about, they can start putting the pieces in, and it's not going to be that time consuming as starting a new course.
So it's unfair for me to judge that you're able to or not, because I don't know you well or what you've already got in place. So maybe better I should say to you, do you feel confident that you'll have all of the coursework required, that students require to complete graduation credits for the state of Utah requirements? You will have all of those ready if students were to elect an online path.
Yes, or we wouldn't propose it.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Bowles. Any other questions from board members? Okay, go ahead, Member Spiker.
Thank you. So I'm curious, you had talked about that you're hoping that having this online potential option for students would help with enrollment. Definitely makes sense in terms of those 2 additional high schools opening. Could you speak to, do you know what the districts are offering in terms of online instruction at the moment and how that might compete with what you're trying to do? Or do you happen to have that information?
Yes, so we are within Alpine School District, and they have their online school that students can go in and just take classes on. I guess you could say they have it set up. I have not seen that, but from what students have come over and told us from other schools, they just go on and they complete a course. They've told us there's not much engagement, but that's a student perspective. I haven't seen their coursework online, but they have the same thing through electronic school that they have.
Thanks. And I think that leads me to my next question too, is that you spoke to, these a lot, and I see this and I hear this from my own, my friends in my life that, we can't do both, right? So I'm either going to be face-to-face, I can't navigate, and then teach online. It's burning people out, right? And so I see that this is partly where this decision came from. And then hearing Vice Chair Bowles talk about the reality, right, of curriculum development, and these teachers are part-time. Are they part-time because of I guess, this comes from, I was part-time once. Part-time is full-time, especially when you're a teacher. And so maybe you could, I don't know, just speak to that a little bit. And are these current staff that you have that want to be online you know, looking at the pie chart that you shared, or these new folks that you're trying to recruit to teach online?
No, I love the questions on it. So the reason for part-time is because our hopefulness is that this brings in anywhere from 20 to 50 students to start off. It's not like we're asking for 300 students. That would definitely be a lot more full-time. The reason for the part-time teachers is because we're going to have one over each of the different subject areas, and their content is what's going to be created already. These teachers are going to come in, be they, because I do have 2 teachers right now that have asked if they could become the online teachers, for one in a science and one in a math. But any of the teachers that we do hire on will already have the content there provided for them, that they are more than welcome to, as the year goes on, to improve as that goes. So that the content's going to be provided by our current staff right now on campus, because I do have a grant available that I'm able to then provide funding for them as they are working on these online. So it's not that it's, guess what, guys, your summer just got taken away from you. It's, no, we've got funding for those that are interested and able to help us out with this, which we have everyone on board. They all want to help us out and be successful with this, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I'm looking behind me just in case Member Smith is raising her hand. Okay. I have some questions then, and I really applaud your efforts to meet the needs of your students. That's why every single one of us woke up one day and thought to themselves, I'm going to go into education, right? So I really applaud those efforts. My questions kind of dovetail with what Member Spiker was getting at with the part-time teachers. And can you explain, like, is that a 0.5 FTE, a 0.25? What is their availability to the students, especially if the synchronous part is only once a week with in the SEL class, if I understand correctly? What is a part-time teacher's job going to look like vis-a-vis that engagement with their students?
I'm just making sure you guys want to talk. So the reason why for the part-time is because they're going to cover different subject areas. So like hiring a history teacher that will be able to do the main core areas for the history. And what we're hoping for is that they'll be able to continually have that engagement with the students. Because like Jen and Crystalline have mentioned, we're all about family. We're all about making sure the students know us. And so yes, they'll have that engagement through, because each of those part-time teachers will have a mentoring class, which is our SEL that you mentioned. And that's going to make they're going to need to engage with those students face to face. They're also going to be tracking that data to make sure, are they engaging online, which we know that students struggle with also doing stuff online. So we already know in advance that we're going to need to do some encouraging to help out our students as they are online. We saw that through our first year doing it. I think we made more phone calls in attendance saying, hey, why aren't you participating now versus when they are in person? And so that part-time person will also be able to engage with us on campus, have the same trainings with us on campus. They're not going to be a separate identity. Those part-time people will be included and part of our Rockwell family. So I see it as that they're going to have a lot of work because we're going to have content available, but it's not going to be perfect content, and they're going to need to refine it and make it more applicable to the students, especially as we go and find out, hey, we might have a little hiccup in this area. So I see that they actually will have a lot to do with us.
Okay, thank you. And that was helpful. I think I missed, are they going to be half-time teachers or quarter-time teachers?
Plan right now is 0.5 FTE.
So half-time teachers, okay. And then I'm just going to repeat back what I think you said to make sure that I'm on the same page as you. Your teachers are going to be building curriculum from existing things that you already have. They're going to be teaching. They're going to be tutoring. They're going to have 4 preps for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, 3 to 4 preps. And then they're going to be tracking the students. Okay. How are you going to ensure that your teachers have the skills for instructional design?
we've learned this year, and Jen and Crystalline can help me out with this, and we've learned that even our teachers on staff don't all have that background. And so we have staff members that help and go around training who do have it. So we realize that we're going to need to do training on it. But when we do interviews, we'll be asking for those that have some background. And if not, we're willing to do that training and monitoring of them on that.
Okay, thank you. That's good. How are students going to access your content? Are you providing a device or connectivity, or are they expected to have one?
The assumption as we've been working is that it would be their own device at their house. And we do have availability of stuff that they can be able to check out from our school. But the main assumption is at the moment they would need to be able to use their own device. As we grow, we clearly would love to be able to help out, but as of this moment, that's not something we're able to do.
Okay. Okay, and then I'm just going to make a comment. I'm impressed with your presentation. You've put a lot of thought into it. You have taken into consideration a lot of the things that I would have previously asked that I'm not even bothering with because you've covered those. There is an economies of scale when you're running a brick and mortar building and you have an entire staff dedicated to doing what you're already doing. When you're adding an online and a blended program, there's a lot of fixed setup stuff that you have to do, whether it's for 20 to 50 students or whether it's for 2,500 students. And so I would just request that you take that into consideration. You're going to have a lot of fixed items that you're going to have to get it set up, regardless of the number of students that transfer over to your online program. And when I hear you talk about strategies for engaging students, especially if you get new students coming into your school and they're not necessarily your brick and mortar Rockwell families that have been there forever, what I hear you saying is, well, we'll just make appointments with them and we'll call them. And I would like to know what you will do when they don't return your phone calls and you can't get a hold of them. What are your strategies for engagement?
Currently, we go visit them at their houses, so we would include that as well for our
Stalking,
online.
A+.
Can we say that? I'm teasing. But yeah, we currently, for students that we lose track of, meaning that they stop talking to us, I and my counselor, we have attendance tracker for currently right now. We go out and we visit, and we will continue to do the same thing for online students because they get the same as if they're on site.
Okay, thank you so much for answering all of my questions. I appreciate that. Any other board member questions of Rockwell? Okay, we'll bring the discussion back to the board members then. We'll look for discussion and then a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept Rockwell Charter High School's amendment to offer an online option.
Okay, we have a motion by member Spiker. Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Okay, and a second by member Phillips. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Good luck to you. It is a big job.
We appreciate your time. Thank you. And when does this start? I guess that's my question. Like, when would we be able to initiate this? Is this for the next school year?
Well, Director Lambert, they're asking when they can implement their online program. This would be for next school year. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
So you've approved it. I believe their board has approved it. We just, to make it all official, we need signatures, but it's all been approved.
Okay, cool.
And so, oh, sorry, Marie does have something.
We have their Exhibit A ready to go, so that will be on consent for next month after it was reviewed today by the authorizing committee. And so then we will send for signatures in June, so ready to go.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, we are at lunch, and that will be downstairs. So we will We will adjourn right now, and then we'll come back at 1:15. So we're going to eat fast. All right, let's come together and reconvene for our afternoon portion of our State Charter School Board meeting today. It looks like Michelle is online, and I'm assuming Member Olson, Michelle Smith is online, and then also Member Olson.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will reconvene. We have yet another amendment request, and we will follow the same process with Ms. Stevenson doing an overview. Board members can ask questions of Ms. Stevenson. We'll invite Providence Hall up, and then we will have the opportunity to ask them questions as well.
Thank you, Chair Tonks. This is our last material change that we'll be going over today, and this one is for Providence Hall. As far as the background goes, Providence Hall has grown and has also grown in their commitment to the International Baccalaureate Program. This I took actually from their website, where it talks about their schools, their families, and their community is how that commitment has grown. It lists itself as one of only 12 schools in the nation with a full continuum of the K-12 International Baccalaureate programs, and that Providence Hall moves forward each year committed to constantly improving their impact as they educate globally minded, balanced, and rigorously educated world citizens. Which brings us to our request today. Providence Hall is requesting to no longer be an IB school in the secondary grades. So what that would look like would be that the elementary would follow the IB primary years program. Junior high would now follow something called Patriot Pathways, and high school would have standard as well as honors, AP, CE, and CTE courses. If there are any questions, I can answer those and turn the time back to you, Chair Tonks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stephenson. Board members, do you have any questions for staff? Okay, let's go ahead and have Providence Hall come and take a seat up here. Please turn your microphones on and state your names so that we know who we have with us today. Right up front. And then if you push the speak button, that will turn your mic on.
Alrighty, my name is Nathan Marshall, the Executive Director at Providence Hall. And would you like me to just go over some of the changes, or?
Sure, that would be just fine. And then we'll open it up for board members to ask questions.
Perfect. There were some substantial changes to some of the higher education rules with regards to recognizing the full diploma. And as our school evaluated the number of credits that the students would be receiving with the IB diploma, those changes in higher education really took us back and allowed us to take a pause and really look at the programs that we have and the pathways that we have for students. And the current IB diploma that we were offering at Providence Hall, it allowed for about 20% of our students to participate in the program. The diploma program is not school-wide. You actually, in your junior year, you transition to that on your own as student. It's student choice. And as those students were transitioning to the universities here in the state of Utah, and with some of the changes in the higher education, the number of credits those students were receiving would be substantially reduced based on the program that we were offering. We don't have as much ability to basically overlap AP and IB courses like some of the bigger high schools do, just due to staffing limitations and whatnot. And so as we met as a board and as a school, the AP credit is something we could do internally, still provide that same structure of the IB program, and continue the components of the IB program, but shift it to the AP and still be able to incorporate some of those credits that the students would be receiving at the high school and college level. And as that changed, we now have 8 CTE pathways at Providence Hall, which I think speaks to a large portion of our population outside of that 20% that was participating in the IB program. And with the changes with our school incorporating some more of those CT pathways and CE, concurrent enrollment, we wanted to make sure that the junior high's curriculum aligned with some of those opportunities at the high school, and making sure there was that longitudinal alignment. And so the pathways at the junior high align with some of those CT opportunities. We have 8 different pathways at the junior high, as well as just some of those higher level classes that we offer at the junior high and the high school, and aligning some of those pieces as well. And so our hope was to create a greater opportunity at the high school while maintaining some of that IB framework, but now shifting it to the AP side where we can receive that college credit, and then aligning the junior high with some of those efforts.
Okay, board members, questions? Vice Chair Bowles?
And I have to first say, I really like the IB program, of course. I like IB, particularly for things it offers that I'm not seeing others offer, like the theory of knowledge requirement that IB has, which is really an amazing product. But I know you've thought through this carefully. You've made decisions based on, and what I'm hearing you say is that the universities are not accepting, universities that your students are attending are not accepting the IB diploma and awarding credit like they may have in the past. I mean, I've heard a Harvard recruiter say we look at all of our IB graduates first, and then we admit others beyond that because they believe they're so well prepared. Talk a little bit, you said that. Can you give us a little bit of specifics about what you've looked at as far as universities accepting the program? And then I have a couple of others, if that's okay.
And I will say that we have a very, very successful IB program. We have, this last year we had 100% pass rate, which is just, it's amazing. And we're usually about 89 to 94% of our students that participate in the full diploma program actually pass. What we're seeing now is the University of Utah, particularly where a lot of our students go, and most of the universities that we're interacting with now don't accept the full diploma. And some of the courses like theory of knowledge and some of those additional ones, the credit just isn't transferring. And so AP offers an equivalent to those pieces that we would like to incorporate into some of our curriculum.
Okay. So of course, it's nothing you can control from the university level. It's astonishing to me that a university would take that position, because I've just seen so many good things come from that. I've only worked, not the early years program, middle years, and the full diploma program. But
can I add one other thing?
Absolutely.
We've been working with, there's a consortium of IB schools that work together to kind of tackle some of these issues, and we have voiced these concerns. and really tried hard to hopefully make some changes at the higher education level to address some of these things. We've met with the universities specifically to try to help them understand the concerns that we have, and it doesn't sound like there's a lot of change on the horizon. So,
I'm understanding your motivation is to try to do good things for the families and students who are going to your school and graduating and thinking of matriculating to institutions of higher learning. So my other question, and yours, you'd be replacing with AP. You didn't say as much about, but I believe, and you probably have more information, AP has worked really hard, the Advanced Placement Program has worked really hard to be competitive with IB and to look at things that IB were offering that they might not have looked at, and to do more of it, to look at across their program to provide even stronger, richer programs for kids. And they have, I believe, a similar kind of program to IB, but it's through the advanced placement folks. You're nodding, so I'm thinking you know that. Will you talk about it?
Yeah, and so the courses that we would offer through the IB program, those 6 areas plus things like theory of knowledge, a portfolio opportunity, all of those things, the AP has created a framework for those things. And so that's the direction we would like to go, is still be able to provide the richness of the IB program. And we do recognize that. The students that take it is a very rigorous, it's, in my opinion, an outstanding educational platform. And we're hoping that the shift over to AP can still provide that rigor and opportunity. And I will also say, in conjunction with our concurrent enrollment, with the AP and concurrent enrollment, as an IB kid, one of our students, you would get like 30 to 52 credits when they graduated from Providence Hall. And with this new format, we can still maintain that potential for them to receive some of those credits, but also still maintain that rigor and opportunity.
Yeah. So I know that here I've told you how much I like IB, and I do. I also like AP. But I like IB for some of the things that they've offered, and if AP can step up to some of that, it was wonderful. And there are some groups, Washington Post, for example, that is they grade schools across the nation. It's purely on AP enrollment, and they recognize schools based on AP enrollment and pass rates. So the amount of your student body that take AP coursework and pass, that's how they're grading schools. So there are some, and they don't consider IB. There are some who really prefer that AP. And I suspect if your families prefer IB to AP, they'll vote with their feet. They would know that, and I suspect you've done some homework.
Yeah, we did quite a bit of surveys, and our student population, our families are pretty excited about the opportunities.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Member Phillips.
So I have some questions, and I think we just love your school and love all the way back to when it was founded till now. There have been so many great things happening there. And one of the great things has been the IB program. Yeah. And so it's with some pain that I see it kind of, proposed to be removed, except in the high school or at the junior high and high school level. A couple of things. How does this affect your vertical curriculum alignment? When you're looking at a program that you had before that was contained, sort of from the moment that the kids come into your school till the end, they have this rich experience. How do you address that disruption by not having the IB in some places and having it in others? And I have a couple more questions, but I'd like to hear your answer to that first.
So we've talked a lot about that piece. That vertical alignment is important to us. One thing that, as you know, the IB curriculum, it is a framework, and if you break it down to its essence, it is just best teaching practices. The nice thing about IB is it creates some assessment tools and some rubrics to be able to get students to reach those end goals. We recognize the importance of that at the elementary school, and allowing students to think analytically. That inquiry-based learning approach is really important to us. We want to build on those pieces. And as we've sat down and tried to think about how to create that stepping off point, how do we incorporate those things at the junior high level? And our plan is to incorporate some of those best teaching practices from the IB framework and incorporate it into our own unit planners. And those conceptual skills, those higher level thinking pieces, we still want to incorporate some of those best pieces into our curriculum as well.
So my understanding, and I am not a IB certified, so you can educate me. But my understanding was that it's not just a framework; it's also it's very much a curricular, to some degree, a curricular scope and sequence, at least with this, critical thinking and knowledge standards and so on. So I would call it, to that extent, a curriculum, and I may be wrong in, designating it such. So it would seem to me that, particularly if you're removing it on the junior high and high school level, and AP classes are scattered throughout the offering, that it doesn't necessarily replace the real scope and sequence of an IB program for those many years, just to have kind of a capstone AP class at the end of that study. So I would love to hear your response to how that piece of it will be addressed, and then maybe in conjunction with that. Because I have a couple of other maybe pickier questions, but this has been like the centerpiece of Providence Hall's charter. And so this represents a very significant change. It's not just like, an amendment to some little part of the bylaws or some little part of, we want this key element now. It's really significant. It's a change of course, right?
Yeah.
So maybe if you could talk to me about how you replace a whole curricular vertical study with capstone AP courses in these subjects, and how you're looking to redefine yourself as a school when this has been the central piece of your charter.
So to speak to the curriculum side, the IB curriculum at the junior high is, they don't necessarily provide a curriculum. It is a framework. It's an opportunity for teachers to incorporate communication and analytics, and it's an opportunity for teachers to take some of the best teaching practices and incorporate it into what we would define as our curriculum or our standards. When you get to the high school level, that is true. You do the DP program, you have to teach this during this time. These are the concepts you have to use and to teach, and these are the assessment tools you need to use. And I think because it's standardized that way, that's where that college component steps in, and that's where you get the college credit, because it is standardized that way. Our hope is that with the AP stepping in and filling in that void, we do feel like that AP curriculum can provide that rigor the same way that the AP program did, the IB program did. And being able to do it in the same way we did it with the IB program, where we can create a framework that incorporates, the individuals and societies, the science, the math, all of those pieces that at the end of the day, a student's going to get the equivalent of what would be an IB diploma through the AP program. It's hard. This isn't a decision we made lightly, and it's a decision that as we looked at the outcomes for our students, they were working extremely hard. Your AP or the IB program starts your junior year, and these students were going to the university and coming back at us as a school saying, hey, we just spent 2 years in your program getting an IB diploma in what we feel like is a really phenomenal educational experience, and we're getting 7 credits. So help us understand, how do we overcome that? And we had parents then saying, hey, so if that's the case, then is the IB program viable? And that's the question we had to take to our board and ask them, is the IB program viable at Providence Hall? So.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. That's helpful information. So help me to also understand this. It's my understanding that, and I could be wrong here, but that increasingly so, the most competitive schools and maybe even medium competitive schools, kind of your moderate, mid-level, are not accepting AP or IB for a lot of college credit. And that includes AP as well, though. and that there are, you know, a handful of schools, even just in our state, who accept it, and others that don't. But both of them are effective if a student has really participated in those programs in getting students into competitive schools, because the schools, the application process at those competitive and even mid-range schools see those kind of programs as being very valuable. And so I guess, you know, what is the net benefit if college credit is your goal, and if AP and IB are both kind of on the chopping block there for many colleges, though they're effective for application and admission, is there a net benefit here for your school in changing, you know, what has become a trademark of your school, what's central to the charter, what is a vertical curriculum that's already very well established and successful? You know, how many students does this ultimately help, and where are they going, and why is AP then better than IB if the credits aren't accepted in either case, just the rigorous nature of the programs?
Yeah, and that's I think central to some of the thoughts that we had. In terms of the scope and availability, the AP it lends itself more to the collective Providence Hall population. So to do individual classes in IB, it's more difficult to take individual classes. So providing an AP framework allows more students to be able to participate in those higher level courses. Just in terms of statistics, we would have between 22 and 25 students participate in the IB program in the junior year, and about the same, so about 40 of our students would participate in the full program. Now with AP, you know, our numbers are substantially greater, so students are able to access some of those higher level courses it's just easier to get into them because you don't have to commit your junior year and do the full diploma. In terms of the difference between, I guess, the IB and the AP in terms of the outcomes or the rigor, as we've talked as a school board, we truly felt like the IB program did do those things that you just mentioned. You know, they do provide a very rich educational experience, but I don't think, from our experience in talking to the universities, there isn't as much of a response to the AP as there was to the IB side that affected us directly and to students. So, you know, they're being able to recognize the AP classes for college, and I don't know that that's necessarily our ultimate outcome always, right? To get the students the college credit per se. We want to give access to all the students to the higher level courses, and we're finding that AP is providing that as well as the concurrent enrollment. But on that same token, the universities that we're talking to, we haven't had that same, the same impact isn't the same for the AP as it has been for the IB.
Was that? Did you have more questions?
Stephenson, and thank you so much for clarifying. I really appreciate it. To what extent, I know you presented on this, has the staff been able to review the surveys as well as the, you know, sort of the board support for this?
We have not received any of that. This was written into an Exhibit A, and it came about that way.
Director Lambert?
So if just to clarify, this didn't actually come as an amendment request by the school. What it is that the school is updating their charter, and as we were reviewing it as staff, and I believe the authorizing committee, we noticed that this seemed to be a major departure, and so that is why it's being brought to you. So there wasn't an amendment request filled out, and so it came to us in a little bit of a different way. Is that fair?
Okay, thank you for that contextual comment. That helped. Any other questions? Go ahead, Dr. Spiker.
I was hoping you could elaborate on the Patriot Pathways. This is a program that you're developing in-house, is that correct? Who's developing this curriculum? And is it ready to go? If we were to say yes today, or is this work that's happening through the summer to kick off the school year?
And I would say at the core of it are the standards, right? So just like with IB, with the MYP program, we start with the core standards in our courses. Where it kind of shifts a little bit, we have Patriot Pathways for students who have specific interests. So if your interest is in the performing arts or in an accelerated pathway or trying to think of there's 8 of them.
Yeah.
If there's an interest in each of those, the students can create some electives that help prepare them for some of those skill sets. And so it's tiered, right? You can take a kind of a tier 1 or a level 1 into a level 2. And a lot of the pathways themselves are geared towards some of the offerings that we do at the high school. And so our hope is to kind of align some of those, kind of vertically align some of those curriculum with the junior high and the high school. So a lot of them are going to be your standard math classes. They're going to be performing arts classes that we currently offered. They already existed with the IB program. It's just providing opportunities for students to kind of choose some areas of strengths or some areas of interest.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask a follow-up question. And I think this stands out to me. I am a teacher educator. I'm a career educator. And as I look, and it says, there are a variety of pathways offered to provide inclusiveness and diversity. And those are 2 big buzzwords that seem to be on our radar in terms of the political dynamics within our state. They're heavy words. And I think we all know that, right? And with fidelity, they can be incredibly powerful for our students.
Mm-hmm.
So could you speak, because I don't necessarily see, because when we talk about inclusivity and diversity, we're, if I may say, we're talking about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion,
Mm-hmm.
which is much more than I feel belonging, and it's much more than I feel that I found a pathway that resonates with me, and I can. So if you could maybe even you gave an example about math. Can you explicitly share how does engaging in a math elective as part of that pathway meet inclusivity and diversity expectations in terms of those conversations that we're having now? If you could speak to that, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, so there is an advisory class that they do focus on some of that set curriculum. So I don't know that it necessarily speaks to a specific pathway, but more just the overarching opportunity to include some of those things in our education of our students. And so I guess for your example with math, they may choose a pathway that interests them academically, and the advisory curriculum that we would utilize for all students, grades, in this case 6 through 8, would incorporate some of the things that you had just mentioned, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is my lack of knowledge about IB. It seems like it's in line, but it's also different, a very different experience than what the IB would be offering in the junior high experience versus this. No, different. Same in terms of those, because I just help me. Yeah.
So you correct me, and it's just the early years program, the middle years program. You have guidelines that come from the IB folks, but you really develop your curriculum.
I see. Okay.
You do it individually by a
Correct.
school. The real IB program is only in the
in the high
junior
school.
and senior year, not even the sophomore year.
Okay.
It's only the junior and senior year in which you follow a set of courses that teachers have to be certified to teach.
Mm-hmm.
There's an endorsement. Your evaluation, which is your final project evaluation, is sent somewhere internationally, possibly, that is scored. So the teacher scores and this other group score to come to the will this student receive a diploma and complete? But it's really just junior and senior. The rest, you really are developing your curriculum.
Thank
Am
you.
I
correct.
being accurate
Yep.
in that?
Yeah, thanks. And that's helpful because I think, because it's not a one-to-one replacement,
No.
right? It's really how do we embed these same curriculum ideals that we want to see really implemented as our students move into high school.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Member Phillips?
Okay, a couple things. So with this being such a big change to your charter, I'm a little bit surprised not to see a board member here, kind of, letting us know that the board is fully in support of this. I'm assuming they are, and that you can report that, and that this has been voted on in a board meeting. Is that accurate?
Yeah, correct.
And the other thing I'm interested in, knowing that you have, typically, I think teachers are certified to teach IB, and you probably have some teachers who have gone through some rigorous training for this particular certification. Where does that leave them in your school planning and in your school structure? Are they still an integral part of this new pathway? And how will you, utilize all this invested time and money that your personnel have expended in trying to meet the parameters of this very rigorous program? But I am surprised not to see, your board chair or your board vice chair saying, we really want this. This redefines us, but in these ways, because this is the school we are.
Yeah. Apologize. I wasn't clear on that piece, so apologize that they're not present. So I would say in terms of the changes and the teacher curriculum and the expectation for the teachers to be certified, I don't think this necessarily takes away from the training that we provided, especially at the MYP program. Again, those are best teaching practices in my opinion. So I think we can take some of those best things that we've learned as teachers and incorporate into our unit planners and things that can continue on some of those things. I just feel like that the training that they'd received really kind of elevates all of us collectively at the junior high. When it comes to the high school, those teachers that were teaching IB, a lot of them do teach AP courses, and so the change for them specifically would just be, it wouldn't be a big shift. If you're teaching history, AP history, or individuals and societies, the curricular changes, there are some, but there's some that are a pretty easy walk over from one side to the other.
Any additional questions? I have a few, and I'm going to start by describing an experience that we had as a board a couple months ago when a school had a pretty significant change that they wanted to make to their operations. And when they came, they had their entire board here, and they had data for us. They had surveys. They had engaged all of their stakeholders in this process, and we still had a lot of questions about it, but we were able to get a feel for where every set of stakeholders stood as a result of their having everybody here at the table. I am extremely uncomfortable with having one person who is the director speaking on behalf of your board for something that fundamentally changes the nature of your entire school and makes the school mundane. When you're one of 12 in the state that does the IB program, and then you go to not, that is a huge shift. And so I would want to see and I have the disadvantage of not being on the committees. So maybe all of this was discussed in committees, and I apologize if it was and I am overstepping. But I would want to see the parent surveys where they are clamoring for Patriot Pathways over IB. I would want to see information from the teachers saying, yeah, I went and did this IB certification. And just by way of background, I taught in Ohio for 13 years, and I was an IB certified teacher in French and Spanish. So I know what that certification looks like. I know what that training looks like, and I know what that provides to the students as far as a framework for how they move through articulated content. And I would want to see how the teachers feel about it. I would want to see how the students feel about it. I'm a little concerned about the abrupt shift that you've been doing this for how many years now, and then all of a sudden we're not doing it anymore. Like, where's the on-ramp for something new? Where's the data? Where's the testing to make sure that what you're replacing it with is going to provide the same level of opportunity for the students? So I'm just sharing what makes me uncomfortable about this request. Earlier, you talked about the University of Utah not taking the IB credit. I mean, you know, I'm a director. AP credit isn't accepted. Like, we have so much trouble with AP credit, we've moved to full-on concurrent enrollment. So I don't know what the difference is between IB and AP as far as acceptance rates at colleges, but what I heard you saying was that they weren't accepting the IB credit, so you're moving to AP. I just want to be really clear that you want to make sure that that AP credit is going to be accepted if this is what your board and teachers and students and parents all want to do. When I look at the University of Utah site, it says that students enrolled at the U who achieved a score of 5 or higher on the IB examinations may be awarded university credit. They have to submit a request for evaluation to the Office of Admissions to have the credit recorded on their records. Is that not? Are you not finding that to be accurate, or help me understand what that
Yeah,
process
so
looks
in the
like?
past, if you received the IB diploma, they would give you 30 credits. And they've since shifted away from that. And the credit is true. They have to score a 5 or higher in some of the areas. And some of the courses that they would recognize before are no longer available for students. And so where students were getting 30 to 50 credits of college credit when they transferred from our school, it's been substantially reduced. And this is coming back from students that are going to these universities and trying to get a better understanding as to the big shift and the change, you know, over the last couple of years has been first the acceptance of the diploma itself, because that's a big one, right? Because it incorporates the theory of knowledge and some of those other courses. And with the AP classes, at least the universities we were talking to, the equivalent for the class, so history or whatever it would be, would equate to, you know, closer to that what that IB diploma was going to, what the student would receive with the IB diploma.
Okay, I'm looking at the University of Utah site, and it says 30 total credits for IB diploma. I don't know how to verify or validate that. I know I threw a lot of information at you. Will you go through and address all of those concerns? And will you add to it, when you're part of the IB program, you're provided with third-party oversight and teacher training, and you have a partner in education that is helping you and being responsible for all of those things. And without the IB program, it seems like there will be a big gap in that area. So again, I threw a lot at you, but will you address all of those things, the data, where's your board, parents, teachers, students, all your stakeholders? I would appreciate that.
I would love to present those pieces to you. I have some of that with me, but I don't have, I can share with you the surveys that we sent out. And we did reach out to our stakeholders, our parents, and our teachers, and I don't have that data with me today.
Member Phillips?
And to be honest, I wasn't aware that, anyway, but I can definitely provide that data for you.
Go ahead.
I would also be interested in knowing, you know, when this was approved by the board. Obviously, you've talked about a board meeting in which this was approved and discussed, and you've also talked about surveys.
Yeah.
And those are both compelling.
Yeah.
But it's not something I've seen either, and I would this is such a big change, I would think we would need to be very assured that this was the direction that the stakeholders at your school, and particularly your board, wanted to go.
Yeah.
in for me to feel good about approving this amendment.
Makes sense.
Okay, any additional questions, or are we ready for a motion? Or a discussion? Any of those?
I just have one comment.
Go ahead,
and
Member
that is-
Smith.
That is, like a lot of what has been said, I understand and feel both sides of this debate. But I think at this point, almost nobody on the board is ready to move forward with granting this request, because like we do want more data and we do want more information of a lot of kinds. So rather than, trying to put forth a motion and vote on anything, we might just direct them to return, like we'll table this, right? Come back next month.
Okay,
Well,
thank you for
next month
that.
again is problematic, right? But come back on a reasonable timeline that we can work out with staff.
Okay, and I think
that's my comment.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Member Smith. And I think that that's in keeping with, can we move on and not take any action and direct them to come back with?
How about if we could even make a motion to table to the next meeting and make it a time certain, right at near the first of the meeting, or just on the agenda of the next meeting. I know it's a short meeting, but we give the opportunity to come back with that information that I think we do need.
And the board meeting could start a little earlier to accommodate as well. We definitely, if this is a need and a desire of the board to bring it back, we will work with whoever we need to make sure it's on the agenda. But whoever becomes the next board chair can definitely put it on the agenda.
I'm thinking that individuals feel handicapped without that additional information. And for us to make that considered decision, we really need you to have the opportunity to bring board members, to talk about the surveys, to have students who have tried to apply for credit give us those, their story,
I can provide that information for you. Yep.
That kind of stuff. So I will make a motion to table this discussion to our June meeting, which will coordinate with staff timing to do that, this will become an agenda item on we'll table to our next meeting to give the opportunity for that additional information that we apologize you didn't know to have today, but we think we really do need in order to make a full decision. So that's a long motion. My motion is to table to the next meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
I second.
Second that. Oh, go ahead, Cindy.
No, you go ahead, Member Smith.
I'm going to give that to Member Smith. We have a motion by Vice Chair Bowles and a second by Member Smith. Any discussion to the motion?
Chair Tonks, can I comment on this just briefly?
Yes, go ahead, Member Olson.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to be, I guess just a word of caution. I commend the school for trying to innovate and finding that something that they've been implementing has not been serving their stakeholders. And I commend them for being daring and innovative in trying to chart a different course. And so I want to be cautious while I support the motion. I want to be cautious in making sure that we're not sending the wrong message. The message that I understand us to be sending to the school is one of just making sure that we have data that supports this decision, and not necessarily second guessing the decision of the school, presuming, because we have no reason to doubt what's been presented today, presuming that the board has been involved and that parents and stakeholders have been involved in carefully deliberating about this decision. I just want to make sure that we're not necessarily second guessing that. We just want to make sure that, in fact, that data is available and that we have those stakeholders here available so that we can visit with them more, just to understand a little bit better what's driving this decision. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Member Olson. And your point is well taken. And you may not be able to see, but there's a lot of head nodding and agreement around the table that is what you said was accurate. So thank you for that. Member Phillips.
I just wanted to add too, and I appreciate that caution, but I think our that this motion is well taken because, and I'm assuming that this is still discussion to the motion.
Yes.
Okay. Because just my cursory research over this last year's board meetings, just since January of 22 this year, and obviously that's only 5 months, I can't find anything about the discussion of this. Maybe it was decided, in the fall sometime, or maybe it was decided. Maybe I've overlooked something that was on an agenda item, but it would. I think it's just best practice for us to be assured when a charter is making such a huge change in its charter that we have. Kind of a sure knowledge of where your stakeholders, and particularly your board, have come down on this, because that is not apparent to me today. So while we certainly don't want to send the wrong message, we have already viewed you as an innovative school. We've already viewed your school as very successful. Your charter was approved on this basis, and you've successfully run this model. So to do a shift from that does give us pause. Again, when you are already innovative, and when we're not convinced at this point with the data we have that your stakeholders want this. That doesn't mean they don't, but we don't have, perhaps the evidence we need to make sure that we allow and vote for this huge shift.
Okay, thank you. And let's do the motion, unless you want to do discussion to the motion. Is that part of the discussion? Okay, Director Lambert would like to provide some information speaking to the motion.
So I've been messaging with Joanne about just meeting space and everything. What this would probably do, not that I'm trying to discourage or anything, I'm just giving information that it probably would mean that we would need to start our meeting here because we can't get the space where we were going to be. So what that would probably mean, and it's probably a little better anyway because it would make it easier for the public to come to our meeting, is that we would have to have our meeting here, then we would probably have to then adjourn to go and do the other stuff, the spotlighting. But that, just wanted to let everyone know that information.
Thank you. That is very relevant and good to know that we have a place if needed. Thank you for that information. Member Phillips. Oh, sorry, Member Smith, I'm going to go to Member Phillips, and then we'll come right back to you.
I just wanted to say, as part of discussion to this motion, that I would feel more comfortable too if prior to the school returning that we were given documents in advance to review, so that we knew that that it wasn't just a presentation in the moment, but that in fact we had received, the survey documentation, the board meeting minutes, and perhaps even documents that have been presented to the board by administration in persuading the board, or by board members in persuading other members to make such a change in their charter. I would want to review that before the meeting.
Okay, Member Smith.
I just wanted to mention that there are the significant logistical issues with meeting at our regularly scheduled board meeting next month. And so we may want to push it to the next meeting after that, which might solve some of those, although I know that probably is problematic for the school because of timeline constraints. But it is an option.
Thank you. Yes, and it sounds like we can make next month work. I would think that based on the will of the board, we've got a lot of good options in front of us. Any further discussion to the motion? Okay, will you restate the motion?
So the motion is to table this discussion until our next meeting, which will be in June, and then that's the motion. Okay. In the discussion, we talked about that would mean that we'd need to meet a little earlier and begin our meeting here before we move to the other second location where we had intended to meet. It also means that with board packet or sooner, we would like to have the materials to review, which will also shortcut the time that we have here if we've had time to look through that. So that was in the discussion, but the motion is to table this discussion to the next meeting. Also in the discussion to give you opportunity to bring those folks together, right? So table to the June meeting.
Okay, thank you for that recap. So we have a motion by Vice Chair Bowles and a second by Member Smith. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously and hopefully provides you with some good direction, and we will see you back here with more people next month. Thank you. Okay, this brings us to our next agenda item, which is our 2022-2023 meeting schedule, and Director Lambert is going to go over that with us. It is also item number 7 in your binders so that you can see all of those dates very clearly.
You, Chair Tonks, and I'm not going to get to say that very often. Much more. Yeah, Chair Tonks. So it's that time of year where we adopt our meeting schedule. Our meeting schedule is normally pretty easy. It's just every second Thursday of the month, except we tend not to meet in July. However, because we use the USBE boardrooms, when they change their meetings, it necessitates that we change our meetings. So let me point out a couple of them. This is not reflected on the page that you have, and that was posted because this was done prior to the USB changing their September meeting, but they moved their September meeting to the 8th. We could meet that same day in Basement West if we so chose. Also, another option is if we haven't scheduled yet a board retreat, and normally we'd do a board retreat. I think we were going to do it for this month, but then this got to be a very full agenda. June then also sometimes is the board retreat, but then again, we're doing something that hopefully we can start an annual tradition of doing of spotlighting schools. And so it is possible that we may want to do that on September 8th and maybe go off-site anyway, just so that we're in a different place. We'll still have to record it. We do not have to live stream our meetings, but we do, of course, have to record them and make sure that they're open to the public. So that could be an option that would allow us to keep that September 8th meeting. I also want to bring you your attention to the January meeting. We already, in discussing with Vice Chair Bowles about, different potential dates, are the normal meeting that would be, I think it's on is it the 13th? That would normally be in January. USBE moved theirs. Oh, okay, so it is the 12th. That USB did move their meeting to the 12th. Now, January is our big meeting. That is where we hear satellite requests and the new school applications. Sometimes we need 2 days for that meeting. We could move, we were talking, Vice Chair Bowles suggested, I believe, moving it to that Wednesday. But this room is not available, so we would have to maybe get some help in maybe trying to see if we can kick others out since we were kicked out. And then March 9th is also, it conflicts with the USBE meeting, but we already have tentatively scheduled, I believe it was the week before, so we would just be trading with them. And I am open to more questions to provide clarity. We did not schedule a July meeting because typically you do, you take off July. That can always also be changed if you want to meet in 2 months. But just as a reminder, our meetings follow the fiscal year, so it goes from July 1 to June 30th is what we're talking about.
Brian, as opposed to meeting in 2 months. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder, would you remind us, Director Lambert, is the January meeting sometimes a 2-day meeting?
Yes, it is.
That's what I'm
really
remembering.
depends upon how many proposals and applications we get. So in 3 months, in August, you will be hearing proposals. We don't know exactly how many proposals we'll have until that deadline, which, remind me, it's in June. Yes. And then it just depends upon how many you invite to submit a full application. So we will know after your August meeting tentatively on whether or not we'll need 2 days. We also are having more schools show an interest in opening satellites. However, there is more rigorous standards that we have to hold to in terms of who we can pass on for you to consider. So it's kind of that guessing game, and right now I have no clue.
I'm wondering then if the January meeting tends to be potentially disrupted anyway, where we have to do a Wednesday, Thursday meeting, and so it's already, there's at least potentially one day that we have to do that's not our usual day. I wonder if it would be, much less disruptive than just to have the board meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday instead of the Thursday, and then we don't conflict with USBE on that day at least?
So that is where we as staff have tentatively been working to see if we can schedule the room. The problem is this room is already scheduled by other people for, I believe it's the afternoon of Tuesday and all day Wednesday, or some mixture of that, but it's already scheduled for those 2 days. And so we would have to work to find a place to hold it, or see if we can bump, if those that are in this room could go to another room. But if we're going to have to work to find another place, we may want to keep our Thursday day. I want direction before I start heading down those avenues.
I would recommend taking a look at your calendars and seeing what's going to work best. It's so critical to have everybody here, especially during during the proposals and the approvals, so that we're functioning with a full board.
And just one other note that I forgot, thank you, Joanne, for reminding me, that the June 11th, that was a typo, because if you see, that's a Sunday. So it should be June 8th. But yes, I echo what Chair Tonks, say that again, just stated. All our meetings are important, and it really depends upon what issues we're dealing with, but we know that August and January are 2 very important meetings.
Okay, Member Phillips?
Just a couple of things. I'm really comfortable with staff's suggestion on September 8th of going off-site for a strategic planning meeting, and that takes care of that potential conflict. And I hesitate to even ask this because I know that the USBE has all kinds of things scheduled. So if we were to bump our meeting ahead on the 4th and 5th of January, would we be conflicting already with other meetings that they have scheduled?
So if I can give you, I know that Angie is doing a great job in just trying to see, and let me, yes, so right now for the March, we've tentatively scheduled it for March 16th, depending upon board members' availability on that. So that's something that we do know that we have the room on there. So we were looking on January 11th, there is a meeting in the morning. It's a prevention and at-risk LEA meeting, so I don't know if they can bump that somewhere else. Yes, and that was in the morning. And then on January 10th, if we need that extra day, you have counseling specialists in the morning, and then there's leadership council is in the late morning. That's okay. So easy on
Chair,
that one.
can I make a motion?
Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair Bowles.
So may I make this motion, that we accept this meeting schedule with these changes? September 8th, not really a change, but so we'll know the September 8th, we'll meet off-site. January 10th and 11th, we'll tentatively plan those days in this room, pending what you find out relative to the scheduling of this room. And we may have to reconsider that date, but currently if we could just for ourselves lock in the 10th and 11th and know that we may need to be flexible. that we changed the March meeting to the 16th. And on this, we also, June will be June 8th on this schedule. So that would be my motion, that we accept it with those changes.
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Bowles and a second by Member Phillips. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. You have a schedule. We will move to our readiness to open report, and once again, the lovely Miss Stephenson will be providing us with a presentation for Beehive Academy Elementary and Ascent Academy Saratoga Springs.
Hopefully you're not sick of me yet.
We are not.
Thank you, Chair Tonks. All right, we have 2 satellites that we are doing their readiness to open review this month. Those are for Beehive Academy, and it's their elementary section of their school, as well as Ascent Academy's Saratoga Springs location. So for some background, Beehive Academy with their elementary will follow the same mission and vision as the rest of Beehive, which is that their students of diverse cultures achieve academic excellence and personal skills in a challenging and innovative STEM environment to become contributing global citizens. This location is in Sandy, and was really excited to go to their ribbon cutting and see that they have expertly turned, I think it was an old Shopco, into a school. So really great, a really nice location there. And so they will now be serving grades K through 12 with their school. As far as the readiness to open items, everything is complete except for just construction is nearing completion. They estimate that their date of occupancy will be July 15th, and everything else is complete and on track for a successful opening. As far as Ascent Academy, Saratoga Springs, they also will be operating under the mission of the Ascent Academies of Utah, which is that their network of schools will utilize the school-wide enrichment model to build a strong educational foundation and to provide an enriching, individualized, and varied educational experience to all students. This location will be in Saratoga Springs and is serving students in grades K through 6. Ascent Academy Saratoga Springs has most of their items complete. There are a few that are in process. Their construction is also nearing completion. They did not have an exact date, but they estimate taking occupancy in early July. Right now, their enrollment is a little under where they were hoping to be at this point. They are authorized for 546 students. Their break even is 350, and as of May 9th, they have 347. So they're pretty darn close there, and they anticipate being able to at least be above break even for that opening. With that, as their director expertly put it, they have hired the staff they need at this point, with being not quite fully enrolled yet. And so he considers that in process, and they will continue to adjust their hiring needs based on the enrollment of their students.
And Director Lambert, go ahead.
So just to frame this, this has to do with requirements in R277 552-4. And in there, under 4, we have to certify in writing to the superintendent by June 30th that, and then it lists a bunch of requirements. And so that's where you have Ms. Stephenson has been working with these schools and checking in on them, and that's why you've got all those things up there. And what we as staff do, and what has been our process in the past, is that the board considers all of this information and makes a motion on whether or not these schools are ready to open, just so that it's clear, if it wasn't already, staff is recommending that you do this. And then once that happens, we have a letter ready to go to the superintendent certifying that they are in fact ready to receive funds. So this has to be done so that the school can start receiving their funds in July.
Thank you for putting that into context. I was going to add a little bit to that and just thank Director Lambert and staff. This process is so much more helpful than in some of the previous years, just hoping that schools would be ready to open or applying different standards to different schools. This at least gives us the same standard excuse me, to apply to our schools so that we have a good sense of how ready they are to open. And I know that we have Beehive, a representative from Beehive here. Do we have somebody in the back? Brandon, is that you? Okay. The lead school director of Ascent sends his apologies and let us know that he had a family emergency and couldn't be here, but he sent a representative. I wanted to just recognize you, and if board members do have any questions, they're welcome to ask you, but it is not necessary. Okay. Oh, it does. Okay.
If I can be, yes, staff is
Well, not do
hoping,
motions today.
we are hoping for a motion so that when we
Okay.
send, if you make the motion to approve them to open, then staff isn't just saying, yes, we certify. It has
It's
also
coming
that the
from
board
us.
has
Okay.
weighed in.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm sorry, Member Phillips.
Let's all look at Member Spiker.
I'd like to make a motion, please.
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to, how do I want to phrase this? That we, board, we certify, is that we certify that Beehive Academy Elementary and Ascent Academy Saratoga Springs is ready to open in August 2022? Fall 2022.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second to the motion?
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Spiker and a second by Member Phillips. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Congratulations to Beehive and to Ascent on doing the heavy lifting and the hard work to get everything ready to roll so that you can best serve students. Okay. At this point, we will turn the time over to Director Lambert for she will conduct our board officer elections, not our board member elections, just to be clear.
So I don't know if I'm the one conducting them, but according to the bylaws, the elections are kind of directed by the vice chair. And Vice Chair Bowles directed that staff collect any nominations or anyone that is interested in running for chair and vice chair. And as of right now, staff has only received interest from current Vice Chair Bowles to run for chair and Member Phillips to run as vice chair. And so if there is no other interest, if there's no contest, the election may be done by acclamation with a simple motion. That is also according to the bylaws.
Thank you for that overview. So at this point in time, we'll look for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Member Smith.
I'd like to move that we accept Brian Bowles as our board chair-elect and Cynthia Phillips as our board vice chair-elect by acclamation.
I'm wondering about the language of yeah, I'm going to have Director Lambert clarify that.
So that could be the motion that the board so decides, and that would allow Chair Tonks, allow me one more meeting to be able to still call her that. Or because it is a different meeting, I do know that we have had conversations with Chair Tonks and that I think she could go either way, but we had talked about that she could enjoy just being a member for her last meeting as well. So you could have her be elect, or you could just, I think the idea is, I think both Chair Bowles and our Vice Chair Bowles and Member Phillips are ready to step in if that's what the board is wanting.
Okay, any other discussion to,
I would be happy to withdraw that motion since it hasn't been seconded yet.
Yes.
And make a new motion.
go ahead.
Can we do that?
Yep.
Okay, I withdraw the previous motion and I move that we elect Brian Bowles as our new board chair and Cynthia Phillips as our new board vice chair by acclamation.
Okay, now we have a motion on the table, and do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Smith and a second by Member Spiker. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing, oh,
Yahoo!
that was the best discussion we've ever had. Any further discussion? Anybody want to put a woot woot in there or raise the roof? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Congratulations to Chair Bowles and to Vice Chair Phillips. And I'm going to take a point of personal privilege, even though I'm not even the chair anymore, but you can stop me if you want to. And just say thank you to our board members. It has been such a pleasure to work with each one of you. I've learned so much from each one of you, former board members, current board members, and to all of our staff as well, particularly to Director Lambert with her excellent leadership and the good work that she does. I know that we know as a board how hard Jennifer works. It's been, I've had a real front row seat to see that over the past few years being in a leadership position. And all of the things and the barriers she removes and the things that she finesses so that we have the stuff that we need to be able to make the decisions that we have on our table as the board. And I really appreciate it. I couldn't have asked for better people to work with. And thank you. It's been great, and it's been 8 years, and I'm happy trails away with a Yahoo and a woot woot and a raise the roof. We need one last motion.
Am I the traditional move to adjourn?
Yes.
You can't adjourn without me. I would like to move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.